What have you been up to, sweetheart? I noticed the knowing look in my mother's eyes and did my best not to roll mine. Oh, just the usual, I replied smoothly. Work, Alfie, sleep, repeat. Mum took a long drink of her tea, clearly satisfied, before putting the cup down with a look that said she was about to get involved. Your texts are full of everything except social plans. I can't believe you haven't gone out at all. I wrinkled my nose playfully. Believe it, Mum. I actually like staying in. Besides, you know how I feel about leaving Alfie with a babysitter unless it's necessary. That's fine, but don't forget you're still young. 30 isn't retirement age. She tried to sound casual, but I could hear her concern. I sighed and set my cup down. Mum, you know how I feel about this. Yes, I know. Her face softened. And I get it. Losing James was... She paused as if afraid her words might hurt. It was a deep sadness, and I would never tell you to move on quickly. The pain returned at the mention of James. He was everything to me, I said quietly. And I was everything to him. I don't need to find something else that won't compare. Mum reached over and squeezed my hand. I understand, but love can happen again. You have a long life ahead. I forced a smile. Alfie is my life. Mum smiled back, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't figure out. Yes, and he's a wonderful boy. But he won't be little forever. Someday he'll grow up and live his own life. What about you, then? I'll get a cat, I replied dryly. Mum sighed dramatically. Oh, Lily. If I knew I was raising a hermit, I would have worried more years ago. I laughed a little and took another sip of tea. I'm not a hermit. I go to work. Speaking of work. She examined me, curiosity shining in her eyes. No potential partners there? I almost choked on my drink. Definitely not. The manager is happily married, the finance director is old enough to be my dad, and the rest of the office is women. She raised an eyebrow. No workers catching your attention? I gave her a look. Mum, no. I conveniently left out the part about my boss, Bobby, who had been a bit too interested in me since I started. There was no need to encourage her matchmaking ideas. I also didn't mention that our new CEO was starting soon after 3 years in Singapore, but that seemed irrelevant. I had never met him, and from what I heard, he likely wouldn't chat with junior employees. Just as Mum seemed ready to argue, the doorbell rang. Oh, thank goodness, I murmured, quickly escaping before she could start another conversation. I opened the door to see Callie standing there, her brown eyes sparkling with energy. Callie, what a nice surprise, I said, cheerful. I hope I'm not interrupting? She looked past me at Mum's car in the driveway. Your mum is here for the weekend? I nodded. She's taking Alfie back to Oxford for a short break. Callie's face brightened. Oh, right. You're working now, aren't you? I won't stay long, she added with a wave of her hand as she stepped inside. I came to ask a favor. I gave her a knowing smile. You need me to watch Evie? She shook her head. Already sorted. It's about tonight. I was supposed to go to a party with Daniel, but he has to go tomorrow now. He wants me to still go, but I'd rather not go alone. The hostess said I could bring a friend, and I thought of you right away. Before I could even think of saying no, my mother, in her usual way, jumped in. Of course Lily will go. I turned sharply to her. Mom, no! Don't be silly, she said, waving her hand as if I was being unreasonable. It's a great chance for you to meet new people. You should take advantage of my babysitting while I'm here. I groaned internally. My usual excuse about needing to find a sitter was no good now. Sensing her victory, Callie smiled. I promise it will be fun. I sighed dramatically. Fine, I'll go. What time do we leave? Around 9. I hate being early. Her smile grew. Thanks, Lily. You're a lifesaver. That's debatable, I muttered, already knowing I would regret this. The moment Callie left, Mum clapped her hands together like she was getting ready for action. Okay, let's look through your clothes, I groaned, throwing my head back. From then until I left for that party, she would be in full stylist mode. There was no escape. It took me nearly an hour to decide what to wear, my room turning into a mess of discarded dresses. In the end, I chose a simple black dress with delicate lace trim. It fit nicely while still being stylish and sophisticated. The thin straps left my shoulders bare, and the faint light made my collarbones stand out. It was a straightforward choice, but undeniably lovely. By 7 o'clock, I had showered, wrapping myself in a soft towel as I sat at my vanity. My golden blonde hair, still damp, naturally curled past my shoulders. I considered straightening it, but chose to leave it as it was. I wanted to feel like myself. Next was makeup. My bright blue eyes didn't need much help, but I dusted some soft eyeshadow over my lids, blending it just right. A flick of eyeliner defined my eyes nicely, and a few coats of mascara made my lashes look long. A bit of bronzer highlighted my cheekbones, and I finished with a soft pink gloss on my lips. When I stepped into my dress, I smoothed the cool fabric against my body and added a pair of black heels. Just a delicate gold bracelet completed my look. Taking one last glance in the mirror, I picked up my clutch and headed out. The party was exactly what I imagined, an elegant gathering in a beautiful Notting Hill townhouse where everything looked easy but was probably carefully planned. The air was lively with chatter, laughter, and the occasional clink of glasses. Guests moved gracefully between the reception rooms and the courtyard outside, their movements deliberate, as if they were aware they were being watched. 2 hours in, I already felt disconnected. I had mastered polite smiles, light conversations, and the art of pretending to sip my wine without really drinking. I glanced around, watching as guests stepped through the glass doors onto the terrace. Lanterns cast a warm glow, lighting the smoke that curled into the night. And then it happened. I felt a strange awareness crawling down my back. I turned and saw a man across the room. He was tall and confidently wearing a charcoal suit that looked custom-made for him. His broad shoulders and lean frame moved naturally, like he owned the space around him. He had a presence that quietly drew attention. But it wasn't just his stature that caught my eye. It was his strong, handsome face. His dark green eyes met mine, their gaze revealing something I couldn't quite interpret. A warm feeling crept up my neck as he walked closer. His steps were slow and careful. "Would you like a cigarette?" His voice was deep and smooth, sending a little shiver down my back. I raised an eyebrow, giving a small smile. "I don't smoke, but thanks." He looked amused and nodded at my drink. "Another drink, then?" His confidence was clear, almost too much, but I could handle myself. "I think I've had enough," I replied lightly, giving him a polite smile. He stayed put. His eyes scanned my face closely before settling on my lips. A warm feeling spread through me. "We haven't been introduced," he said softly. "I would remember someone like you." I met his gaze, refusing to back down. "Lily Harrington." He showed a small smile. Maybe approval? A lovely name for a lovely woman. I tried to stay focused. "You don't play nice," I said playfully. "Or do you just skip introductions?" He smiled. "Wolf. Alexander Wolf." The name suited him strong and bold. Before I knew it, he reached out and held my wrist gently. "Dance with me, Lily." I blinked, pretending to be surprised. "You should ask, not just tell." That smirk again, it was maddening. "Would it help if I said please?" "What a shame I don't fall for your charm, Mr. Wolf," I replied sweetly. His chuckle caught my attention. "Let's dance anyway. Sometimes silence is nice." It was easier to go with it than argue. But I wasn't ready for how my body felt when he pulled me closer. His arm wrapped around my waist, holding me firmly yet completely in control. Heat radiated off him, and I noticed every spot we touched. My heart raced. It had been a while since I felt this awareness. I shifted, trying to create some space, but he held on tight. "Cold?" My throat felt dry. "No." "Afraid?" I looked up, feeling tense. "You think too highly of yourself," I responded, trying to step back. His gaze grew focused, something deep in his eyes. "Why so defensive, Lily?" "I'm not," I replied quickly, forcing a smile. "But maybe you should try talking to someone more. Open." He let me pull back a bit, but didn't let go of my wrist, running his fingers over the ring on my hand. "Does this mean something?" he asked casually. I gasped, pulling my hand back. "You have no right to question me, Mr. Wolf." "Alexander," he spoke smoothly, "and you still haven't answered me. My glare was icy. I don't have to. He smiled slyly. How about dinner with me tomorrow evening? I reacted sharply. Am I supposed to be impressed? I asked, sarcasm heavy in my voice. I have plans tomorrow, so thank you, but no. Unfazed, he kept eye contact. How about Monday? No. Tuesday, then? No. And that goes for every other day, too. A long pause followed before he smirked again. Would it be so bad to have dinner with me? I lifted my chin, my voice calm. I don't play games, Mr. Wolf, and I have no time for men like you. Men like me? Charming and too sure of himself. His smirk widened. Are you sure you're not a little bit curious? I was. And that was why I needed to leave. Why are you leaving so quickly? His voice called out, smooth and steady, making me stop. I turned, crossing my arms and narrowing my blue eyes. Leaving? Not at all. I'm just stepping away from an unneeded chat. Alexander Wolf smiled with his hands in his pockets, showing a confidence that bothered me. Really? Is the chat pointless, or is it just me? Both, I replied sweetly. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's late. I have work tomorrow. His smile grew as I realized I had walked right into a trap. Lily, he said leisurely, amusement in his tone. Tomorrow is Sunday. I froze. I like to get things done early. His green eyes sparkled. Done with what exactly? Being productive, I said stiffly. Not that it's any of your concern. He watched me, clearly enjoying this. Productive how? By not wasting time on men with too much free time, I shot back. His laugh was deep. Yet here we are. I clenched my jaw. I was trying to leave. But I stopped you, he said smoothly, taking a step closer. And since you have no work tomorrow, you're free for dinner. I inhaled sharply. That doesn't mean what you think it means. Alexander tilted his head as if considering. I think it does. You're over the top. I prefer persistent. I prefer if you found someone else, I muttered. His lips twitched in amusement. Yet you haven't said no. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to shout. Fine, I snapped. One dinner, one drink. And then you let me be in peace. His grin was full of satisfaction. Deal. I rolled my eyes and turned to leave when his voice halted me again. You forgot something. I turned back cautiously. What? Your address. I hesitated. I could simply meet you there, I suggested, hoping to regain the upper hand. Alexander leaned in slightly. You could, but you won't. I clenched my jaw. And why not? He shrugged casually. Because we both know I'd find a way to get it anyway. I sighed, taking his phone and typing my address, then handed it back. He looked at the screen, a slow smile spreading across his face. Pleasure doing business with you, Lily, he said playfully. I already regret this, I muttered, turning away. Good night, Lily, he called after me, far too pleased. I'll pick you up at 7. I ignored him, walking toward Callie, who looked very interested. Don't, I warned before she could speak. She just grinned. Oh, I can't wait to hear about this. Neither could I, because I had a sinking feeling that tomorrow would be a complete mess. You're back early. I jumped at the unexpected voice and turned around to see my mother in the doorway of the living room, arms crossed with an all-knowing look. Mother, were you waiting up for me? I teased, taking off my shoes with relief as they hit the floor. Not really, dear. But I couldn't sleep until I heard about your evening. Oh, great. Time for the Inquisition. I stifled a groan, knowing she would want every detail. Shall I make some tea? I offered, buying time as I moved toward the kitchen. Tea can wait, she replied smoothly, following me. I want all the details. I turned on the kettle, gathering mugs to buy myself some extra moments. It was nice, I said vaguely, adding loose tea leaves to the pot. Margaret raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Nice? You went to a party filled with some of London's best men and all you can say is nice? I sighed, pouring hot water into the pot. Fine. It was a lovely party. There was good food, decent drinks, and nice people chatting about everything. She pursed her lips. You didn't meet anyone? I paused with my hand hovering over the sugar bowl. That's a complicated question, Mother, I said patiently. I met many people, Probably about 40. Everyone was very polished and sophisticated. Her eyes narrowed slightly. And yet you're being a bit unclear. I stirred my tea, not looking at her. I might have had a few interesting talks. Margaret's lips twitched, her sharp instincts picking up on my change in tone. Ah, now we're getting somewhere. She settled into a chair, watching me closely like a cat with a cornered mouse. Tell me about him. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. I knew you would ask. Of course, she said with a smile. So who is he? I paused. Telling her about Alexander Wolf would lead to more questions. He's just someone I met, I said lightly, placing her tea in front of her. She took a sip, looking at me over the cup. Someone who clearly made an impression judging by how you're dodging the question. I sighed, knowing I couldn't avoid it. His name is Alexander Wolf. He's confident, a bit arrogant. Margaret's brows lifted, her interest growing. Handsome? I rolled my eyes. Unfortunately. Her smile grew. And you're going to see him again. I opened my mouth to protest, then closed it, realizing she was right. Margaret leaned back, triumphant. When? I huffed, pressing my lips together. Tomorrow. Her smile widened. A date? It's dinner, I corrected firmly. Just dinner. With a handsome, confident man you met at a party, she mused. Clearly worth a second meeting. Stop making it sound more than it is, I groaned. Margaret just sipped her tea, looking very pleased. After a long pause, she smirked. So, where is he taking you? I sighed. I don't know yet. He's picking me up at 7. Her smile deepened. Well, in that case, we should find something nice for you to wear. I groaned again. This is exactly why I didn't want to tell you. Margaret simply laughed, her happiness clear. Oh, don't fight it. Let me enjoy this. As I watched her plan my outfit for tomorrow night, I felt a nagging worry that I had made a mistake. The morning began with my mother bustling into the kitchen very early, looking too cheerful for someone who had just arrived. She was supposed to be relaxing during her weekend visit, but that didn't seem to be in her plans. Get up! She cheered, setting down a tray of pastries as if she'd baked them herself. It's a lovely day. I thought we could take Alfie to the park before I whisk him away for half-term. I groaned, holding my coffee like it was a lifeline. Mother, it's barely 9. You're alarming the neighbors with all this energy. She ignored me, focusing on Alfie, who was in his dinosaur pajamas, happily eating toast. Ready for some fun, darling? We'll feed the ducks and maybe have a picnic. Yay, Gran! Alfie squealed, his eyes bright. Can we go on the swings? Of course, love, she said, ruffling his messy blonde curls. But first, we need to get Mummy moving. She looks like she might melt into the chair. I shot her an annoyed look over my mug. I'm fine. I just have a lot on my mind. Still trying to think of a way to skip your dinner tonight, aren't you? She said casually, taking another pastry. My stomach turned with guilt. I had spent the entire morning thinking of reasons to cancel. Sudden illness? A work emergency? Nothing felt believable. Dinner? Alfie piped up, his little face confused. With a friend? It's just dinner with a friend, I corrected quickly. A male friend? My mother asked pointedly, raising an eyebrow. Yes, Alfie, I said dryly. Mummy is having dinner with a man. Is he nice? Alfie asked innocently, his eyes wide. Not really, I muttered, ignoring my mother's sigh. She leaned in and said quietly, Lily, at some point Alfie will need a good male figure in his life. It would be good for him to see you out with someone. I rolled my eyes. Mom, he's 4. He needs someone to play with, not role models. And maybe someone to help you relax a bit, she joked. Honestly, darling, you're way too serious. I ignored her and focused on the breakfast table, but the guilt lingered. As much as I dreaded my dinner with Alexander Wolf tonight, her words made me think. Maybe she had a point. Alfie deserved to see me enjoy life sometimes, even if it meant dealing with someone a bit too full of himself. At precisely 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I had to admit Alexander was annoyingly on time. Mummy, your friend is here, Alfie shouted happily, peering out the window. Alfie, I groaned, shooing him away. Never mind. I smoothed down my dress, a simple navy wrap dress that I hoped said casual but not interested. Then I forced a polite smile and opened the door. There he was, standing at my door in a nicely tailored suit that looked both casual and striking. His dark green eyes sparkled with mischief as he took me in. Right on time, I noted dryly. Punctuality is important, he said with a hint of a smirk. Before I could reply, my mother appeared, looking curious. Well, hello there, she said warmly, giving Alexander the once-over. You must be Alexander. Mrs. Harrington, he greeted smoothly, extending his hand. A pleasure to meet you. Oh, call me Margaret, she said, looking entirely too charmed. Lily didn't mention how charming you were. Mom, I hissed, feeling embarrassed. She ignored me. Are you sure you don't want to come inside for some tea before you go? I just made scones. Alexander's smile widened. Thank you, Margaret. But I promised Lily a nice evening. Maybe another time. Oh, I insist, my mother pressed, her eyes sparkling. You're exactly what Lily needs, a bit of charm and good company. I'm sure, I muttered, earning a chuckle from Alexander. Finally, after convincing her, we managed to leave the house. Alexander led me to his car, a sleek black Aston Martin parked outside, looking very fancy among the other family cars. Subtle, I remarked as I got into the passenger seat. He smirked. It's important to make a good impression. You definitely do that, I replied sarcastically. Do you drive this everywhere, or just when you want to impress people? Only when I'm picking up unwilling dinner dates, he joked. The car started up, and as he drove away, I turned to him, raising an eyebrow. So where are you taking me tonight? The fanciest restaurant in London? He chuckled, unfazed. I thought about the Ivy, but I figured you'd like something a bit more relaxed. We're going to Scott's in Mayfair. The seafood is supposed to be great. Fancy, I said, trying to hide my surprise. I guess I should be thankful you didn't choose somewhere with a name I can't say. Don't worry, he said smoothly, glancing at me with a twinkle in his eye. If the menu is too fancy, I'll help you out. I rolled my eyes. Oh, come on. I can handle ordering my own food. Just don't expect me to be amazed by expensive fish. He laughed, a rich, deep sound that was annoyingly contagious. You know, Lily, your sarcasm makes this more enjoyable. Happy to help, I replied, deadpan. Can we get this over with? I have plans to stare at my ceiling later. Charming as always, he said softly, driving onto the main road. I have a feeling tonight will be memorable. I slouched in my seat, preparing myself for the evening ahead. Somehow, I had the strong feeling he was right. Dinner wasn't bad. The food at Scott's in Mayfair was excellent. The atmosphere was classy and the service was great. But the conversation? That was tough. Alexander Wolfe was unyielding, his confidence annoying, and his amusement at my sarcasm even more so. Out of spite, I had picked the most expensive meal on the menu, not because I really wanted it, but if I had to endure this dinner, I might as well enjoy the best seafood available. Unfortunately, he didn't seem bothered at all. In fact, he looked quite entertained. So, I decided to make the most of it. Since it was free, I made sure to eat every last bite while he relaxed in his chair, enjoying his wine, his dark green eyes sparkling with amusement. Something funny? I finally asked, raising an eyebrow as I finished my lobster. Not at all. Just admiring a woman who enjoys her food. It's refreshing. I gave him a flat look. You say that like women don't eat. Oh, they do, he replied, watching me with amusement. But some spend more time picking at their meals than actually eating. I smirked. Well, since I don't have to pay for it, I see no reason to waste it. His eyes brightened. Good. I wouldn't let you. I rolled my eyes and grabbed my wine. How generous of you. He leaned in slightly. You know, if I didn't know better, I'd think you weren't having a good time. I met his gaze, unimpressed. And yet, here I am, suffering in luxury. His mouth twitched. That's quite the situation. You could let me go, I suggested helpfully. Why would I do that when I'm enjoying the evening? I exhaled sharply, setting my glass down. You have a strange idea of enjoying yourself. You wound me, he said, placing a hand over his heart in playful drama. You know, Lily, I think you secretly like this. I took another sip of wine and stared at him. Oh, absolutely. Just like people love tax audits, he laughed, a sound that was far too smug for my taste. I do love a challenge. Good for you, I muttered, poking at my plate. By the time dessert arrived, something rich with dark chocolate, I thought I had successfully resisted both his charm and my own unwanted attraction to him. Or so I thought. 5 minutes later, we were walking down a quiet Mayfair street toward his car. The cool evening air was brisk, but I kept a safe distance, trying to end the night without any more trouble. Then it happened. My heel caught on a loose cobblestone. My ankle twisted, and before I knew it, an arm wrapped around my waist, steadying me. Careful, Alexander said softly, standing too close for comfort. I'm fine, I quickly replied, trying to step away. But he didn't let go. Are you sure? You almost fell. I shot him a glare. Lovely imagery. Thanks. Just checking if you're okay. His fingers brushed my wrist before I pulled it back. I can walk. Are you certain? If not, I can help. My eyes widened in surprise. Don't you dare. His smirk grew, his dark green eyes sparkling playfully. Would you be able to stop me? Alexander, I warned. Lily, he smoothly replied. I took a step back, testing my ankle. Thankfully, it held. See? Perfectly fine. What a pity, he said. I like the idea of helping you. I groaned. Just get me to your car. With a soft chuckle, he guided me to the car, still observing me as if my irritation was very amusing to him. The ride home was quiet for about 3 minutes. Just as I was mentally congratulating myself for getting through the evening, he spoke up. Dinner tomorrow. I turned to him, shocked. What? Come over for dinner tomorrow, he repeated casually. Just a simple meal at my place. I blinked. You must be joking. Not at all, he replied smoothly. You have to eat, don't you? I crossed my arms. Oh, so now you're worried about what I eat. Among other things. I frowned. No. His hands remained steady on the wheel as he turned onto my street. You're not even going to think about it? I am thinking about it, and I'm saying no. He sighed, as if this was just a small hurdle. So, you're denying me the pleasure of your company again? Correct. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. You're very stubborn. I smiled sweetly. I know. We pulled up in front of my house, and I reached for the door handle when his voice stopped me. You could at least give me your number. I turned to him with raised eyebrows. And why would I do that? So I can call you, check on your ankle. Maybe persuade you to say yes to dinner another time. That sounds unnecessary. His lips twitched, but he stayed silent, watching me in a way that made me feel uneasy. I needed to get out of this car now. Well, I said, clearing my throat. Thanks for dinner. Any time, he said easily. But I expect you to be more enthusiastic next time. There won't be a next time. That's what you think. I sighed, opening the door. Good night, Alexander. Good night, Lily, he replied smoothly. I'll see you soon. I rolled my eyes and stepped out, shutting the door behind me. As I walked toward my front door, I had the strange feeling that he was still watching me, and somehow I knew. This wasn't over. Monday mornings are predictable, which is what I like. I arrive at the office at 8:55 a.m., balancing my coffee, my handbag, and the last bit of patience I have after a weekend spent trying not to think about a certain annoying man. Work is my safe place, a routine, a place where I know what to expect. As I step into the building, I only expect my usual tasks, answering emails, organizing schedules, and politely avoiding my boss's increasingly obvious attempts to turn our professional relationship into something more. Bobby Williams is a good boss, kind, capable, and always professional at work. But outside office hours? He's persistent. I'm not interested, and I've made that clear politely, of course. But Bobby believes I just need a little convincing. That means Monday mornings come with this. Good morning, Lily. Bobby's voice greets me the moment I settle at my desk. I look up to find him leaning against my doorway, smiling warmly, his light brown hair perfectly styled. Morning, I say, forcing a smile. How was your weekend? I pretend to check my emails. Fine, thanks. Do anything exciting? I hesitate. If I say yes, he'll want details. If I say no, he'll find a way to suggest I should have spent my time with him. I settle for a vague, just relaxed. His smile lingers. Maybe I can take you out for dinner next weekend. You deserve a break. I quietly exhale, keeping my tone light. That's really not necessary. Lily, he says smoothly, stepping further inside. We spend all week working together. It's not a crime to have a meal as friends. Friends. Right. Before I could speak, the office fell silent. We're finally meeting the new CEO, I heard someone say. I blinked. The CEO? Bobby frowned at me. Please tell me you read my emails. Of course, I replied, though I was lying. He looked skeptical, but went on. Well, in case you missed it, BAM Logistics has a new owner. He starts today. He was supposed to come in 2 weeks, but he's here early. I nodded, trying to take in the information. Okay. What do we know about him? Bobby shrugged. Not much. He stays out of the spotlight, but he's a big deal, really rich. I took a sip of my coffee, not feeling very enthusiastic. Great. Just what we need. Another boss. Bobby chuckled. We'll find out soon enough. There's a company meeting in 10 minutes. I sighed and grabbed my notepad. Of course. The conference room was full of employees whispering to each other. I heard he's tough, one said. Or maybe he's a genius, another replied. I ignored them and sat beside Mark, ready with my notepad. The room went quiet when the senior executives came in. In the center was Alexander Wolf, looking confident and sharp. I gasped. There he was, in a fancy black suit. The man I had dinner with 2 nights ago, the one I had turned down. This was not good. I gripped my notepad tightly. Alexander scanned the room, his sharp eyes taking in everyone. I hoped he wouldn't notice me, wouldn't even see I existed. As he began speaking about his plans for BAM Logistics, I couldn't focus. My mind was racing in panic. Bobby leaned over. He's impressive, huh? I could barely respond. Just the night before, I had sat across from him and said no to dinner again. I tried to keep my expression calm as Bobby looked at me with concern. You okay? Yeah, I managed, trying not to show my fear. This was so strange, standing in front of my new boss. If he recognized me, I would totally freak out, so I did the only thing I could think of. I hid behind Bobby. Bobby noticed. What are you doing? He whispered. Nothing, I returned, pressing against his side like a shy animal. Bobby shifted, but I nudged him to stay still. Just stay put, I whispered. He muttered something I ignored. Finally, the speech ended and the room erupted in applause. I sighed with relief as we returned to our desks. Maybe I would be lucky. Maybe Alexander would be like the last boss and hardly show up. That would be perfect. I was imagining an easy future when my desk intercom buzzed. Miss Harrington, the CEO wants to see you in his office. My heart sank. Bobby raised an eyebrow at me. You? Yep. Why? I wish I knew, I said through clenched teeth, feeling overwhelmed. Bobby looked at me oddly, but I didn't have time to address his questions. I stood, smoothed my dress, and began what felt like the longest walk to the elevator. At the top floor, I paused for a moment, then knocked. Come in, a smooth voice replied. I steeled myself and entered. There was Alexander, sitting comfortably in a big leather chair, looking too pleased with himself. He spotted me and smirked. This wasn't going to be good. Ah, Miss Harrington, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Please, have a seat. It's nicer than hiding behind your boss. I felt my throat tighten, but tried to play it off. I'm not hiding. He leaned forward, eyes sparkling with mischief. Oh? So you weren't trying to avoid me behind Bobby Williams? I forced a smile. Not at all, I was just observing. He chuckled softly. Creative excuse. What can I do for you, Mr. Wolf? He picked up a document from his desk, pretending to read it thoroughly. I wanted to welcome you to my team. I blinked in surprise. Your team? Yes, Miss Harrington. As of today, you're being reassigned. My mind went blank. I what? You are now my personal assistant. No way, I said, shocked. He raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? With a deep breath, I tried to sound calm. With all due respect, I already have a boss and I'm happy where I am. Not anymore, he said smoothly, sliding a paper toward me. Your reassignment is approved. You now report directly to me. I stared at the paper, feeling agitated. This couldn't be happening. Did he know about me before our dinner? I quickly looked up at him. This is unreasonable. I didn't agree to this. You didn't need to, he replied nonchalantly. I own the company. I make the decisions. This feels unfair, I shot back. He merely shrugged, unfazed. Welcome to corporate. With relaxed grace, Alexander picked up a folder from his desk, flipping through it as if it was fascinating. He wasn't hurrying. He seemed to study each page carefully. I sat stiffly in front of him, trying to look calm. So, he began, still looking at the folder. You've been with BAM Logistics for... He flipped a page. 6 months. That's correct, Mr. Wolf, I replied, doing my best to sound composed. He looked up, a bit amused by my formality. My COO says you're punctual and good at your job, he continued, as if we were having a typical work meeting. Thank you, I said coolly, wishing he would get to the point about why I was there. Suddenly, he caught me off guard with a personal question. How long have you been a single mother? I blinked, stunned. What? He grinned. You have a son, 4 years old, correct? Oh my goodness. I sat up straighter, hiding my shock behind a polite smile. I didn't know that was required information for my work. He just shrugged, flipping another page. It's not, but I like to know my employees. I hold back my words, not wanting to respond to his provocation. Yes, I say simply. I have a son. And before this job? He asks, his tone too casual. You hadn't worked for a while? This feels more like an interrogation than a meeting. I take a breath to steady my voice. I was taking care of my son. His eyes shift a bit, something hidden flashing across them before he leans back in his chair. Interesting, he says smoothly. And the father? Is he still around? Or should I take the M's in front of your name as a hint he isn't? That's enough. I sit up straighter and look him directly in the eye. Mr. Wolf, if this meeting is just a way to dig into my personal life, I have work to do. His lips seem to twitch, as if he's enjoying this too much. No reprimands, Miss Harrington, he replies casually. I was just curious. Then he looks over me, slowly and carefully. Suddenly I feel all too aware of my fitted navy dress. It's suitable for the office, but now it feels uncomfortable. Great. He meets my gaze again, amusement clear in his eyes. You dress very well for someone who claims to avoid attention. I choose not to respond. And, he goes on, tapping the edge of the folder in front of him, it's interesting to confirm that my efficient secretary and the woman I met at the event last weekend are the same person. Oh, come on. I let out a sharp breath. And now that you've confirmed your thoughts? He smiles slightly. I'd like to extend my dinner invitation. I blink in surprise. Excuse me? You heard me? I stare at him. Does my job depend on whether I say yes? His brow raises, clearly entertained. I lean forward. Because if it does, I'll quit right now. His smile falters for just a moment. The mood shifts. You'd resign? He asks, his voice neutral. If I have to, I say plainly. I enjoy my job. I do well at it. But I'm not here to be anyone's project. There's a long pause before that annoying smirk returns, a bit softer this time. Are you always this unfriendly with men who show interest? My temper sparks. I choose to live a low-key life, Mr. Wolf. Last Saturday was a one-time thing. Your dedication to your son is commendable, he replies lightly. But I don't see how dinner with me threatens that. I breathe in slowly. There must be many women who would be happy to have dinner with you. Why not ask one of them? I don't want one of them, he says quietly. I want you. I glare at him. Thank you, but no. There's a playful glint in his eyes now, clearly untroubled. And what if I insist? Before I can respond, his phone buzzes loudly, offering a welcome break. Seizing the moment, I shoot to my feet and hurry away, ignoring the polite call of my name behind me. I rush to the elevator, pressing the button urgently. Once the doors close and I'm enveloped in silence, I let out a sigh. Too close. Very close. When I finally reach my desk, I still feel a little shaky. I sit down, placing my hands on my lap, and take a few deep breaths. Ping. My phone buzzes. It's a calendar notification from Alexander Wolf. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Dinner. I stare at the screen, wondering if he's joking. I type back angrily, declined. A minute later, I receive a message. Event reinstated. I stare at my phone in disbelief. Declined. Ping. Event reinstated again. My mouth drops open. I type more slowly this time. With respect, this is highly inappropriate. Seconds later, another message arrives. Alexander Wolf. You're fighting a losing battle, Miss Harrington. See you tomorrow. I can't believe it. Gently, I let my head rest against my desk. This man is going to be the end of my patience, or I will find a way to manage this. Maybe both. Wednesday was a mess. One of the secretaries had called in sick, leaving the rest of us to take on more work than usual. By mid-morning, I was overwhelmed with emails, reports, and requests, all urgent, of course. I hadn't even had a proper cup of tea, making me one small problem away from losing my cool. When my desk phone buzzed, I groaned loudly. Of course, I glanced at the caller ID. Bobby. Just great, the last person I wanted to deal with today. I hesitated before answering, thinking about how I might share the news, or if I should even tell him. I already spoke with Alexander about starting my new role next week, allowing me to finish up my work here. It wasn't my job to tell him anyway. That was Alexander's responsibility. Still, the thought of speaking with Bobby made me uneasy. Why? I owed him nothing. We weren't close. I tried to keep things professional despite his ongoing advances and awkward moments at the printer. I shook off my hesitations and picked up the phone. Hello? Lily, hi. Bobby's overly cheerful voice came through. I heard you've been helping Mr. Wolf lately. I froze. So much for a smooth transition. Just a few tasks here and there, I answered lightly. Temporary help. I regretted saying that immediately. There was a pause on his end. Right. Well, I was just checking on the updates from yesterday's orders. Have they been entered yet? Relief washed over me with the subject change. Not yet, I'll finish them soon. Great, he replied, though his tone felt colder now. Guess I'll be seeing less of you. I forced a polite laugh. Probably. Another pause. Well, see you around. The line went silent. I placed the phone back on its hook and stared at it. That felt strange and uncomfortable, but I pushed it aside, attributing it to the stress of the day. I had enough to worry about without imagining things. Nevertheless, I wished Alexander had made the announcement himself. It wasn't my job, but I sensed Bobby wouldn't just let it go. Lily, take the call on extension 3, said the receptionist's voice over the intercom, drawing me back to reality. I frowned. Only 2 people ever called me at work, my mom or my son's nursery. My stomach tightened slightly as I picked up the phone. Lily? The overly familiar voice on the other end made me close my eyes in frustration. Bobby. Again. I should have let it go to voicemail. Is everything all right? We just spoke. No, meet me in the foyer, he said playfully. We're going to lunch. I blinked in disbelief. Sorry, what? Lunch, he repeated, as if it were the most obvious thing. You do eat, right? I clenched my teeth. I do, but I don't remember agreeing to eat with you. He laughed, seeming completely unconcerned. Come on, Lily. You're usually too busy when I ask. One meal won't hurt. I have work, I pointed out sharply. You have to eat, he answered smoothly. And I have a 2 o'clock meeting, so I can get you back in time. I sighed deeply, gripping the phone to keep from slamming it down. Bobby, I said slowly, trying to be patient. I am not going to lunch with you. A pause. Then, too casually, he said, We'll see about that. Then he hung up. I stared at the phone, debating whether I should pretend to be sick for the rest of the day, but that seemed like too much trouble. I shook it off and focused on wrapping up my work, putting Bobby's invitation out of my mind. Until later. At exactly 1 p.m., I grabbed my bag, ready to leave the office. I had one main goal, to get in and out of the building without seeing Bobby. But as I entered the foyer, I froze. It wasn't Bobby waiting outside. It was Alexander Wolf. He was leaning casually against his sleek black car, arms crossed, looking like someone who gets what he wants. Oh no. My first instinct was to turn around and escape, but he spotted me before I could. His smirk grew as he pushed off the car. "Running away, Miss Harrington?" he called out, his voice filled with amusement. I gritted my teeth, already angry. "I'm on my time now, Mr. Wolf," I replied coolly. "I don't think I should have to entertain you." He sighed dramatically, tilting his head. "I wouldn't call it entertainment," he said, "but I do find your resistance amusing." I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" He opened the passenger door and motioned toward the car. "Lunch," he said simply. I stared at him. "You must be joking." "Not at all," he replied smoothly. "I like to know the people who work directly for me." "I'm still Bobby's secretary," I pointed out. "For the next 3 working days, yes." His green eyes sparkled. "So you work for me afterward." I felt my temper rise. "I have to pick up my son," I said, gritting my teeth. "You'll have time," he replied. "I have a meeting at 2. I narrowed my eyes. "That's exactly what Bobby said." Alexander smirked. "Maybe he and I have more in common than you think." I physically recoiled. "That's the worst thing you've ever said to me." His laughter was deep and rich. "You're making this more difficult than it needs to be," he pointed out. I wanted to argue, but I also didn't want to be the center of attention in the office. So, feeling like I was making a big mistake, I climbed into the car. The drive to the restaurant was quiet, except for Alexander's presence beside me. I stared out the window, ignoring him, arms crossed like a sulking teenager. "You seem tense," he said after a moment. "Gee, I wonder why," I muttered. "It's just lunch, Lily. Relax." "You say that like I had a choice," I shot back. He parked in front of a fancy Italian restaurant in Mayfair, the kind of place where just being there felt expensive. "This is too much," I muttered as he parked. "Couldn't you take me somewhere normal?" "Would you have agreed to lunch if I had?" he asked. "No." "Then it doesn't matter," he said smoothly, stepping out of the car. I hated that he had a point. Inside, the restaurant was beautiful, with dark wood, candlelight, and waiters in suits. Everyone would probably think we were on a date. I sighed, dropping my menu. "Okay, let's just get this over with. Why did you bring me here?" Alexander leaned back in his chair, watching me with way too much amusement. "I wanted to talk about your new role." I froze. "My what?" "Your new position," he clarified. "As my personal assistant." I felt stunned. "I knew you were planning something," I mumbled. He smirked. "I gave you fair warning." I slumped back in my chair. "And let me guess, Bobby doesn't know yet?" "Not yet," Alexander admitted. "I want to be the one to tell him." I stared at him, horrified. "You're quite the strategist." "Thank you," he said. "That was not a compliment." Alexander laughed, clearly enjoying my discomfort. I sighed, poking my fork into the very expensive pasta in front of me. Next Monday was going to be tough. "Since when do CEOs take their employees to surprise lunches?" I asked. He tilted his head. "Since when do employees stretch the truth to get out of lunch?" I almost choked on my water. He smirked knowingly. "You don't really need to pick up your son, do you?" I kept a neutral expression. "I have no idea what you're talking about." He tapped a finger on the table. "You said you had to collect your son from nursery." I lifted my chin, trying to act confident. "I do. Except," he said gleefully, "he's away with your mother for the break." I struggled to hide my panic, but my face must have shown it, as Alexander sat back looking pleased with himself. "Ah," he said. "Caught." I managed to say, "I'm not avoiding any responsibilities. I work part-time. You should know that." Alexander grinned. "Yes, about that," he said smoothly. "We will have to talk about your new schedule." Alexander regarded me for a moment, his expression blank. He still had that confident air, but there was something different about the way he was looking at me now. "So," he said, adjusting his cuff slightly, "can you still finish at 2 o'clock as usual? And if anything comes up, work from home?" I blinked, caught off guard. That was unexpected. "That's fine, Mr. Wolf," I replied, wary, "because I'd like to be there for my son. I'm his only living parent." His expression changed subtly. "You are widowed?" he asked softly. I nodded. He paused before asking, Is it too forward to ask what happened to your husband? I took a breath, placing my hands on my lap. Most people didn't ask. They either assumed they knew or thought I wouldn't want to talk about it. But Alexander seemed genuinely curious. So I answered. He was unwell, I said finally. And unfortunately, he didn't recover. Silence filled the air. Alexander's usual grin faded. I'm sorry, he said, his voice gentler than I expected. I nodded slightly. He thought for a moment before asking, What was his name? I hesitated, feeling a lump in my throat. James Alfred Roberts, I said quietly. Everyone called him Alfred. Alexander nodded. And your son? Alfie, I said, a small, bittersweet smile appearing. Well, Alfred Jr., but I call him Alfie. Alexander's eyes flickered, something unreadable passing through them. He was named after his father. I nodded. Yes. Another pause. How old was he when it happened? I hesitated briefly. I was pregnant when he died, I admitted quietly. He never got to meet his son. Alexander sat still, his gaze fixed on mine. For the first time since I met him, he seemed unsure of what to say. That must have been really hard, he said finally. It was, I said, feeling old memories surface. Sometimes it still is. He nodded, not saying anything empty or thoughtless. He just listened, and that felt more unsettling than anything else. After we finished dessert, I set my fork down and dabbed my mouth with my napkin, preparing for a quick exit. Thank you for lunch, I said, giving a polite smile. I should go home since you have that meeting. Alexander leaned back slightly, watching me closely. Dinner tonight? I almost laughed. Instead, I smiled and shook my head. I'd rather not. His lips quirked slightly, as if he had expected that answer. How about over the weekend? That made me pause. He continued, his tone casual but pointed. I'm sure your son will return, and we can do something together. I blinked, surprised. Bobby had never even mentioned Alfie, let alone invited him to join us. This was unexpected. I hesitated for a moment before nodding. I'll let you know by Friday. Alexander's green eyes met mine for a brief moment. Then he smiled. Please do. The next morning, I barely had time to get comfortable at my desk before my phone buzzed with an urgent message. Bobby wants to see you in his office, now. I sighed, already knowing what this was about. Adjusting my blouse, I grabbed my notepad out of habit and headed to Bobby's office, preparing for the usual drama. As soon as I entered, I noticed his jaw was tight. His usually charming face was now marked with annoyance. Close the door, he said sharply. I did, standing in front of his desk with my arms crossed. What can I do for you, Bobby? He let out a dry chuckle. What can you do for me? He shook his head, then motioned for me to sit. Sit. I'd rather stand, I replied coolly. His nostrils flared slightly, but he didn't insist. So, he leaned in, fingers steepled. Imagine my surprise when I find out you're no longer my secretary as of next Monday. I stayed quiet, watching him. He scoffed. You didn't think I deserved a heads-up? I didn't realize it was my duty to inform you of such decisions, I replied. I assumed Alexander would tell you himself. His expression soured at the mention of his boss's name. Right, he muttered with clear disdain. Mr. Wolf, your new boss. I raised an eyebrow. Is there a point to this conversation? He stood up suddenly, moving close to me. The point, he said, voice lowering, is that I'm not naive, Lily. I tensed. You think I don't see what's happening? One moment you're too busy for lunch. The next, you're getting into his car? I took a breath, trying to stay calm. Whatever you think, don't say it. He laughed bitterly. You know, I really thought you had standards. I froze. Excuse me? His eyes sparkled with something unkind. But I get it now. Of course, you'd choose a millionaire. A woman like you? Of course, you'd go for the guy with more money. My temper flared, and before I knew it, I stepped forward, chin raised defiantly. A woman like me? I repeated, my voice steady. Bobby smirked, but it was a nasty grin. Come on, Lily. We both know you didn't move up because of your skills. The sound of my hand meeting his cheek echoed in the room, leaving us both stunned. For a moment, silence filled the air. Bobby stood shocked, hand moving slowly to his cheek. I took a step back, breathing heavily, my hands shaking with anger. "You have no idea what you're talking about," I whispered, fury shaking my voice. His surprise turned cold. "You'll regret that," he murmured. I smirked sweetly, ignoring the anger inside me. "Not as much as you'll regret underestimating me." I turned and walked out, closing the door behind me. By Friday morning, I was on edge. Anxiety buzzed under my skin, making it hard to concentrate. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, typing half sentences before backspacing furiously. By noon, I had made my decision. I couldn't stay here, not after yesterday's confrontation. The idea of working under Bobby for another 4 days churned my stomach. I didn't need this job. I had enough money to leave. So that was exactly what I would do. I opened a blank document on my computer, fingers hovering for just a moment before I started typing. Each word was clear and final. Once I was satisfied, I hit print, the machine humming softly as it produced my official resignation letter. I grabbed it, signed my name, then folded it into an envelope. By the end of the day, I would hand it over, and this difficult situation would be behind me. Just as I stood up, my intercom buzzed. "Bobby wants to see you, now." The receptionist's tone was neutral, but I could hear the strain. I took a slow, deep breath, pressing my fingers into the desk to remain calm. After what happened yesterday, I should have expected this, but somehow I had hoped he would let it go. Clearly, that was wishful thinking. Holding my letter carefully, I made my way to his office. The moment I entered, I knew a confrontation was ahead. Bobby stood near his desk, arms crossed, jaw tight, his usual charm now replaced with something sharper. "Close the door," he said. I didn't. Instead, I lifted my chin and met his gaze. "If this is about yesterday, save it." He let out a short, humorless laugh. What else would it be? I ignored the bitterness in his tone and laid the envelope on his desk. "This is my resignation, effective immediately." He glanced at the envelope before looking back at me. "Wow," he said slowly. "You're not even going to pretend you're not taking advantage of him?" My heart raced. "Excuse me?" Bobby scoffed. "Come on, Lily, we both know how this looks. 1 minute, you're my secretary, rejecting my advances, and the next, you're in the CEO's car?" He raised an eyebrow. "Convenient timing, don't you think?" I stared at him, anger bubbling up inside. "You think I'm leaving because of Alexander Wolf?" I said steadily. He leaned forward, hands on the desk. "A man like Wolf doesn't hand out promotions without a reason. So tell me." His voice dropped. "What did you promise him?" The audacity of his words drove me to the edge. My vision blurred with anger as my hands trembled. "You've always said you wanted me, but the moment I refused you, I'm suddenly a gold digger." His expression shifted, but I didn't let him speak. "You can't handle that. I turned you down, can you? That I had no desire to be another notch on your belt?" His mouth pressed into a thin line. I let out a humorless laugh. "And now, because you didn't get what you wanted, you think you can insult me? Imply I climbed the ladder inappropriately?" Bobby sighed deeply, running a hand over his face. "Lily, that's not— Save it." I shook my head. "I don't owe you an explanation." He opened his mouth, but I was done. I turned, walked to the door, and left him there, standing in his disappointment. I headed to the HR office, my heels click-clicking against the polished floor, feeling determined. I gripped my resignation letter tightly, the paper slightly crumpled from earlier frustration. When I reached the door, I took a slow breath, preparing for the final step. Luckily, the HR manager wasn't in. Perfect. I stepped inside, scanned the room, and placed my folded letter right in the center of her desk, ensuring it was hard to miss. No second thoughts. No regrets. With one last glance, I turned and walked out, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I grabbed my bag and went straight home, letting out a big sigh when I walked in the front door. Finally. No more dealing with Bobby. No more tiring mind games. I took my shower, changed into something comfortable, pulled my hair up in a messy bun, and relaxed for a bit before focusing on something important dinner. By the time evening came, my kitchen smelled great. I had just finished cooking pasta with chicken and mushroom sauce. I poured myself a glass of wine when the doorbell rang. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. I set my glass down, dried my hands, and walked to the door, hesitating for a moment before unlocking it. When I opened the door, I froze. There was Alexander Wolf with a look that said he knew exactly what had happened. "Are you going to invite me in?" Alexander asked, leaning against the doorframe casually. I crossed my arms. "It's not like you called first, like a normal person would." He smirked. "You're as lively as always. I have to admit I like that." I rolled my eyes. "Of course you do." His gaze over me held some amusement. "So, can I come in, or will you leave me standing here?" I let out a big sigh. "Only because I'm hungry, and I can't stand here all day arguing with you." He stepped inside, looking around my living room. "Nice place?" "Thanks," I mumbled, closing the door behind him. Then, of course, he sniffed the air. "What smells good?" I raised an eyebrow. "Is that your way of saying you want some?" "Yes, please," he said smoothly. "I'm starving." I stared at him for a moment, debating whether to argue, but my stomach protested. Too hungry for this. Instead, I went to the kitchen, got another plate and a glass. Clearly, Alexander had invited himself to dinner. As Alexander sat down at the table across from me, I put a plate in front of him and poured a glass of wine, unable to resist a quick joke. "Sorry, but I wasn't expecting company, so this cheap wine will have to do." He looked up, amused, swirling the glass before taking a slow sip. "It's fine," he said, not bothered. "I'm not as high maintenance as you think." I snorted, picking up my fork. Could have fooled me. For a few moments, we ate in comfortable silence, the sounds just a bit of clinking cutlery and the occasional sip of wine. Then, predictably, Alexander broke the silence. "So, Lily," he said casually, "want to tell me what happened today?" I paused, my fork hovering over my plate. "What do you mean?" I asked, knowing very well what he meant. His green eyes met mine. "Why did you quit your job?" I looked down, focusing on my food. "Because I wanted to." His eyebrows raised slightly. "Was it because of me?" I let out a sharp laugh and shook my head. "Wow, someone thinks highly of themselves." His lips twitched, but he didn't look away. "Answer the question," he said. I breathed out slowly, putting my fork down, my appetite fading. "It wasn't just about you," I admitted. "Bobby wasn't the easiest person to work for. And after today, I waved a hand vaguely. I'd had enough." His expression grew serious at the mention of Bobby, but he kept his voice calm. "Did he say something to you?" I hesitated for a moment. Alexander's eyes narrowed. "What did he say?" I took a long sip of wine. "Nothing I couldn't handle." His jaw tightened. "Lily." I cut him off. "Alexander, I appreciate your concern, but I don't need someone to come save me." He smirked. "That's too bad. I like to help." I rolled my eyes. "Of course you do." He leaned back, watching me for a long moment before taking another bite. "So you quit. That means technically, you don't work for me yet." I looked at him warily. "What's your point?" His smirk grew. "My point is," he said, lifting his wine glass, "for the next few days, you have no reason to avoid me." I groaned. But before I could change the topic, his smirk faded. "But seriously," he said, his voice softer now, "please tell me what happened. Just give me some kind of explanation." I sighed, thinking about how much I should share. Looking at him now, I could tell he wasn't just being nosy. He really wanted to know, and for some reason, that made it harder to hide things. I sighed, swirling the wine in my glass as I mentally debated how much to share. "Bobby has been persistent since I started working there 6 months ago," I finally admitted. "At first, it was just usual comments, invitations I kept turning down. I thought he'd get the hint." Alexander stayed quiet, but his expression darkened. "But he never did," I continued, steadying my voice. "He kept asking, kept pushing, like my refusals were a challenge. And after yesterday and today..." I paused for a moment before shaking my head. "Let's just say he made it clear he didn't like my choices." Alexander's jaw tightened. "What did he say?" I let out a bitter laugh, then decided not to go into too many details. "That I must be leaving because of you. That I had no problem getting into your car. which meant I was after a better job, and my favorite part, that I was promoted because you wanted something from me. Silence stretched between us, heavy and charged. When I glanced at Alexander, his whole attitude had changed, the usual amusement nowhere to be seen, replaced by seriousness. He set his wine glass down slowly. Did he cross any lines? The way he spoke low and controlled made me shiver. No, I said honestly. Just words, but they were enough. He breathed sharply, running a hand through his hair. Did you report this to HR? I shrugged. I handed in my resignation before he could try anything else. I wasn't going to waste another second working under someone like him. Alexander leaned back in his chair, his jaw slightly tense. That's why you quit, he murmured. That's why I quit, I confirmed. His eyes met mine, something unspoken simmering beneath the surface. Good, he said quietly but firmly. Because if you hadn't, I would have taken action myself. Alexander sat back in his chair, his sharp green eyes still showing a hint of irritation, but his voice was calm when he spoke. So, he said, studying me with that intense gaze, what are you going to do now? Can I convince you to come back on Monday morning and start working for me directly as planned? I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. No, Alexander, honestly, it's fine. His lips curled. Fine? Yes, I said, setting my fork down. I have more than enough money to last me and my brother for years. I don't need to work, and more importantly, I really don't feel comfortable working there anymore, especially if it means seeing Bobby again. He didn't respond right away. His gaze seemed to be searching me for something. You won't have to deal with Bobby again, even if you think he shouldn't be fired? He finally said. I sighed. I don't. Not for those comments. It'll only cause more gossip, and honestly, I'd rather be done with the whole place. The last thing I need is to become part of office chatter. Alexander tapped his fingers on the table, his expression thoughtful. You're taking the high road, he murmured. I shrugged. More like I just don't have the energy for unnecessary drama. He paused for a moment, then took a slow sip from his wine glass. You really are something else, Lily. I smirked. I'll take that as a compliment. You should. He leaned back, watching me with a hint of amusement. For the record, I still think you'd make a great assistant. I rolled my eyes. Nice try. Can't blame me for trying. Technically, you're still employed. I raised an eyebrow. Wait, what do you mean I'm still employed? Alexander grinned and pulled out my resignation letter from his suit pocket. Sheila from HR saw this before it could be processed and brought it to me, he said casually. So technically, you never resigned. I stared at him. Excuse me? He shrugged, unbothered. Guess that means you still work for me. I blinked. Did you just stop my resignation? That's literally the same thing. I threw my hands up. Do you collect resignations like trophies? Should I be worried? His grin widened, enjoying my frustration. Relax, Lily. You're not being held hostage. I'm just giving you an option. I narrowed my eyes. And that option is, you could still work for me. From home, more of a data entry role, sorting through and managing logistics data. You'd be handling incoming shipment reports, client invoices, and tracking updates all remotely. I hesitated. That actually didn't sound bad. I loved being a stay-at-home mom, and if I could earn some money without office drama, that would be great. I folded my arms, pretending to glare. So, let me get this straight. You stop my resignation, show up at my house unannounced, crash my dinner, and offer me a job I didn't ask for? He smiled innocently. That about sums it up. I shook my head, half laughing, half exasperated. You are absolutely crazy. His smirk showed he didn't care. And yet, here you are, still employed. It didn't take a genius to see why the office felt different when I walked in. The whispers, the side glances, and the way conversations stopped when I passed by made it obvious. Bobby had been talking. Of course he had. I squared my shoulders and ignored the gossip, choosing to focus on the growing stack of paperwork on my desk. If I acted unbothered, it would die down faster. But some people just couldn't help themselves. So, you're the latest project, huh? I looked up to see Rebecca Scott, one of the senior secretaries, watching me with a thin smile. I raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? She leaned against my desk with a smug look. Come on, Lily. Don't pretend you don't know. The whole office saw you getting into Alexander Wolf's car. She laughed a bit too loudly. Bobby didn't handle that well, did he? I breathed slowly, trying to be patient. Not that it's any of your business, I said evenly, but my personal life isn't for office gossip. Rebecca's eyes sparkled with amusement. Well, that's the thing. It's not personal anymore. Not when Bobby's telling everyone why you got your new job. I clenched my jaw. Let me guess, I said flatly. He's saying I got promoted because of Mr. Wolf? Rebecca smirked. Let's just say he's implying you caught the CEO's attention in a very specific way. I felt heat rise in my cheeks but refused to react. Wow, I said, my voice icy. You'd think Bobby would find something better to do than complain about me. Rebecca looked taken aback, clearly not expecting my comeback. Just a word of advice, she recovered, smiling sweetly. Wolf isn't known for long-term interest. Don't get your hopes up. I laughed, shaking my head. You really think I have time for that? She studied me, trying to find something, maybe guilt. Too bad for her she wouldn't find it. Calmly, I grabbed my bag and collected everything I needed from my desk. This was it. Time to head upstairs and officially begin my new role as Mr. Wolf's assistant. I ignored the stares, whispers, and smug looks from people who suddenly had too much time on their hands. Let them talk. I had a job to do, and a salary to earn, preferably without any unnecessary drama. I slipped my laptop into its case, collected my files, and made my way to the lift. But as luck would have it, my morning wasn't over yet. I barely made it into the foyer before I bumped into something solid. I gasped, stumbling, only to feel a firm hand steadying me. Careful there, a deep voice said. I froze. Alexander Wolf. Just as I was about to start the day pretending I hadn't recently declared him a bit annoying, the universe sent him right into my path. I quickly stepped back, heat rising to my face, but his gaze was already on me, assessing, as always. Are you all right? He asked, looking concerned. I nodded quickly. Yes, just heading upstairs. His eyes glanced at the files in my hand, then returned to my face. Ah, settling into your new role? Something like that, I said, managing to keep my tone steady. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. And here I thought you might have changed your mind. I raised an eyebrow. Don't flatter yourself, I'm just here to work. I admire your professionalism, he said, his lips twitching. I narrowed my eyes at him. Do you always hang around in foyers waiting to surprise people? Only when it's worth it. Before I could roll my eyes again, he stepped aside and gestured to the lift. Shall we? I sighed. Let's. He followed me in, looking too pleased with himself for my liking. This was going to be a long week. By the time Friday came, things had settled into a surprisingly comfortable rhythm. Working on Mr. Wolf's floor had a level of quiet professionalism I hadn't known I needed. The atmosphere was different, more focused, more refined, and best of all, far removed from the petty gossip I'd dealt with downstairs. I had hardly seen anyone from the old office, which suited me just fine. But I did run into Rebecca, the self-appointed news broadcaster, once in the corridor. Her eyes lit up as she wasted no time in sharing some gossip with me. Oh, by the way, she smirked as she walked beside me for a moment. Bobby got a formal warning. Apparently, Mr. Wolf issued it himself. He mentioned something about unprofessional conduct and false information. The whole floor heard it. I blinked, surprised. Really? Rebecca nodded, clearly enjoying the memory. He was absolutely mortified, went pale as a ghost. Watching it was like seeing someone shrink into their shoes. Both deserved and so calmly delivered, it was almost poetic. I couldn't help the small smile that appeared. Right in front of everyone? Oh, yes, she said, laughing softly. And Mr. Wolf was perfectly composed. He didn't raise his voice, just delivered his words with authority and coolness. Honestly, Lily, he's quite the person. Don't tell him I said so, but he's a keeper. I had shrugged it off at the time, but the truth was, it'd stick with me. Alexander hadn't needed to step in. He hadn't needed to defend my name or reputation, but he had shown it, not with loudness or flair, but with a calm, clear strength. It was impressive, respectful, good. It helped me see more about him. Under all the sharp suits and strong looks, he had a deep sense of fairness, and when he cared, he took action. Sitting at my new desk, with a view of the city through the large windows, I felt more relaxed than I had in a long time. No awkward moments, no more dodging unwanted comments, just focus, balance, and peace. Whatever came next, I had a good job, a better salary, and time as a single parent to be there for my child. Speaking of motherhood, Alfie was returning today. A wave of joy filled me at the thought of seeing my son again. It had been 2 weeks since Mom took him, and I had missed him a lot. "Mummy! Mummy! I missed you!" The moment my mom unbuckled Alfie from his car seat, he raced toward me, his little arms wrapping around my legs. I bent down to hug him tightly. "I missed you too, sweetheart." Mom smiled as she watched us. I quickly hugged her before we headed inside, with Alfie bubbling with excitement, eager to share the stories of his holiday. "And then Grandma let me eat ice cream for breakfast. And we went to the toy store. Mummy, they had so many dinosaurs. And guess what? I have a new superhero costume now. And I gotta stay up really late every night." I looked at Mum with my arms crossed. "Wow, so you just broke all the rules, huh?" She pretended to be innocent, blinking at me in a playful way. "What? I'm a grandmother. It's what we do." Alfie nodded in agreement. I sighed. "You do realize I now have to reverse some of this, right? It'll take weeks." Mum shrugged. "Not my problem. That's a parent issue." I gave her a look, but she just smiled, looking pleased with herself. We settled in the living room after making tea. Alfie played with his toys while Mum got comfortable on the couch. Suddenly she asked, "So, how's work?" I froze for a moment. Her eyes sharpened. "Uh-huh. You were very vague every time we spoke on the phone." I cleared my throat. "Well, everything is fine, and I have a new job in a new place." Mum raised her eyebrows. "Different company?" "No, same one." I shared a few details about my new role. She leaned in, resting her chin on her hand. "Interesting." I recognized that look. She was eager for the juicy details. I turned to Alfie and gave him a kiss on the cheek. "Alfie, tell Mummy more about your trip." Mum rolled her eyes. "Nice try, but you're not escaping this chat." "Yep, I was stuck." "So, remember the guy I went out to dinner with?" Mum perked up as we sat at the kitchen island facing each other with tea and freshly baked scones. She took a sip, her eyes sparkling. "Yes? Did you mess it up already?" I gasped, hand on my chest. "Mum!" So supportive. She shrugged, unbothered. "I call it realism." I rolled my eyes. "Well, it turns out he's my new boss." Mum froze, her scone halfway to her mouth. "No way." I nodded, biting into mine. "Way." She put her tea down, eyes wide. "Wait, you're telling me the guy you went out with is the CEO of your company?" I grimaced. "Yep." Mum blinked and then burst into laughter. "Oh, this is good." I frowned. "No, Mum, this is not good." She waved her hand, grinning. "Oh, don't be dramatic. This is incredible. It's like one of those stories I read, except you're the main character." I groaned, covering my face with my hands. "Please don't turn my life into one of your stories." Mum leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "So, does this mean he likes you?" I almost choked on my tea. "Mum!" "What?" she said, acting innocent. "I'm just saying, it's really strange that your boss wants you working from home most of the time instead of leaving the company." I narrowed my eyes. "Why do you say billionaire like that? He's a millionaire, I suppose?" She grinned, sipping her tea. "Whatever, darling, but it's fun." I sighed, feeling the conversation spiral. "And how did your old boss take the news?" Mum asked casually. I kept my tone light as I poured another cup of tea. "There was a bit of office chatter, nothing serious, but Alexander got involved. I found out yesterday that my former boss moved to another department, that's all." She raised an eyebrow. "That's all?" I gave her an exaggerated look. "Yes, Mother, not everything is scandalous." "Still, it must feel nice to be up there now, working directly with the head guy." "Mum," I warned, sensing where this was leading. What? She replied innocently. I'm just saying boss employee stories are classic. I laughed despite myself. That's not a thing. It should be, she said thoughtfully. Anyway, I do like him. Very professional. And he must look really good in those office suits. I groaned. Please, stop imagining my boss in his suits. She ignored me. You said he supported you at work? I blinked. When did I say that? You didn't, she replied with a sly smile. But you just confirmed it. I narrowed my eyes at her, and she looked pleased. It's just nice to see a man behave like a gentleman. Not everyone would make things easier for someone new. I looked away, pretending to fiddle with my teacup. He just wanted to keep things professional. Of course, she said, not convinced. I sighed dramatically. I miss the days when you told me to stay away from men. And I still would if you were chasing someone unambitious. But this one's a CEO, darling. I have standards. Mom! She laughed, pleased with herself. I shook my head, pretending to be annoyed, but deep down, it felt good. The truth was, Alexander Wolf wasn't just my boss anymore, and the way he handled things calm, confident, without creating a scene meant more to me than I was ready to admit. But I would never tell her that. Not yet, anyway. As 6:30 p.m. approached, I felt more nervous than I wanted to admit. It was just dinner, I told myself. Nothing dramatic, nothing to worry about. Yet here I was, changing outfits for the third time, mumbling to myself about how silly this all was. The navy dress I first chose felt too fancy, so I swapped it for an emerald midi skirt with a cream blouse, casual yet nice. I let my blonde hair fall in soft waves, deciding not to use my usual ponytail. Before I could overthink it any further, a small voice called from the hallway. Mummy! There's a cool car outside! Is that him? Who else could it be? I glanced at the clock and felt a flutter in my stomach. Alexander was here. With a sigh that was probably too dramatic, I grabbed my bag and walked toward the door, only to find Alfie already bouncing with excitement. The moment I opened the door, Alexander stood there, hands in his pockets, dressed in a neat black shirt and a charcoal coat. He smiled at me with calm eyes, quickly looking behind me. Good evening, he said. His voice was quiet but confident. Before I could say anything, my mom stepped up beside me. Well, she said happily. You look very nice, Alexander, he smiled back. Thanks, Margaret. It's good to see you again. You too, she replied brightly. Though I wish I could see you in one of your work suits one day. Mom, I warned quietly. Alexander just laughed, clearly pleased. I rolled my eyes a bit. She waved me off and turned to Alfie. Go on, sweetheart. Say hello. Alfie stepped forward, his eyes wide with curiosity. He had only seen Alexander from our front window once and now stood silently in front of him, holding his toy car tightly. Alexander crouched down to be at Alfie's level, speaking softly. Hello there, he said gently. You must be Alfie. Alfie looked up and replied, You're really tall. Alexander chuckled. That's what people say. Do you like pasta? Alfie nodded. Good. I made sure we have some tonight. I heard you like superheroes too? Alfie's eyes sparkled. I have Spider-Man socks on. I'm honored, Alexander said with a smile. No one has ever worn Spider-Man socks for me before. Alfie beamed, clearly liking him. Without hesitation, he reached up and took Alexander's hand. I paused. It was a small moment, but it stirred something inside me. Alexander looked at me. Shall we? We walked out to the car where his driver was waiting, and Alfie chatted happily next to him. Alexander easily matched his excitement, asking questions and listening as if it was the most natural thing in the world. At the restaurant, the staff greeted him like an old friend. They led us to a cozy table that was already prepared with crayons, a children's menu, and a comfy chair for Alfie. Did you arrange all this? I whispered. Alexander replied lightly, You can't invite a 4-year-old to dinner without preparing. He helped Alfie with his napkin and opened a box of crayons. Looking at me, he quietly said, He's wonderful, you know. My throat tightened a bit. I know. Dinner went better than I expected. Alfie, usually shy with new people, was in full storytelling mode. From the moment we sat down, he told Alexander everything his adventures at nursery, the time he lost a shoe, and how his dinosaur toys had a big battle. Alexander listened, nodding and asking for details, reacting as if he was caught up in the story. Mum was thrilled. I pretended not to be affected, but it was hard not to be. By the time dessert came, Alfie was grinning, thoroughly enjoying himself. "Can we see Alexander again tomorrow?" he asked, chocolate ice cream smudged on his chin. "Slow down, champ," I said, wiping his face gently. Alexander smiled at me, a warmth in his eyes. "We'll plan for it." As we walked to the car after dinner, Alfie reached for Alexander's hand again without thought. I noticed how careful Alexander was with him, making him laugh so easily. It shifted something in me, quietly and unexpectedly. Monday morning felt different. For the first time in 7 months, I wasn't rushing through a busy morning. Instead, I took a moment to relax, sip my tea, and avoid Bobby's unwelcome looks. My new work schedule was great: 3 days at the office and the rest at home. It let me feel professional without the constant office drama. By mid-afternoon, I closed my laptop, grabbed my car keys, and headed out to pick up Alfie. But today, something felt off. As I got out of my car, I glanced across the street and felt my stomach drop. A man in a dark coat was standing by the coffee shop, looking down as if checking his phone. My breath caught. Bobby? That couldn't be right. He was still at work, demoted to another floor. But before I could get a better look, he turned and blended into the crowd. I let out a breath. "Relax, Lily. You're being paranoid." "Mummy!" Alfie's excited voice pulled me from my thoughts, and I turned just in time to see him running toward me, his backpack bouncing with every step. I caught him in a big hug. "Did you have a good day, love?" "Yes! We painted dinosaurs, and I got a sticker for being super good." I smiled. "That's fantastic. What color was your dinosaur?" "Purple and green," he shared proudly as I buckled him into his car seat. Then, looking up at me with big, hopeful eyes, he asked, "Mummy, when are we seeing Alexander again?" I hesitated. "Alexander? Yeah, he's funny and he let me pick his dinner." Alfie grinned. "Can he come over?" I barely held back a laugh. "I'm sure he'll come by soon," I said, starting the car. Alfie nodded, satisfied. Now my 4-year-old was trying to plan visits with a billionaire. But even after we got home, that strange feeling from earlier was still there. Had I really seen Bobby? Or was my mind just playing tricks? I needed answers. I took out my phone and called Rebecca. It was almost 5 p.m., so I knew she'd still be at work. She picked up quickly. "Office Gossip Central, how can I help?" I rolled my eyes. "Hey, quick question. Bobby is still on the lower floor, right?" There was a pause, then a snicker. "Of course. He's not happy there. Why do you ask?" I breathed out slowly, feeling some relief. "No reason. Just thought I saw someone who looked like him outside earlier." Rebecca hummed. "Nah, he's still sulking in his little office. If he was back upstairs, you'd know it." I smiled, feeling much better. "Thanks, Rebecca." "Anytime. Oh, and say hi to your new boss for me." I groaned and hung up before she could say more, so I was just being paranoid. Bobby was still at work. Nothing to worry about. That evening was calm. Alfie was on the floor making crashing sounds with his toy cars while I finally got to sit down with a cup of tea. Then the doorbell rang. I sighed. Does no one call before coming anymore? "I'll get it." "Alfie, wait." Too late. By the time I reached the door, my 4-year-old had already opened it. Standing on my porch was Alexander Wolf, looking relaxed and attractive. "Good evening," he said easily, his hands in his pockets. Before I could wonder why he was here, Alfie squealed with excitement. "Alexander, you came back!" Alexander smiled, crouching down a little. "Of course! I couldn't leave my new best buddy waiting, could I?" I pinched my nose in annoyance. "Do you ever give a heads up before dropping by?" He smirked. "Where's the fun in that?" Before I could respond, he pulled something from behind his back. "I brought you something," he told Alfie. Alfie's eyes widened as he took the box. "Oh, wow. What is it?" "Open it and see." In a flash, Alfie tore off the wrapping to reveal a big Lego dinosaur set with a giant Trex and raptors. Alfie gasped with joy. "This is the best present ever." He hugged Alexander's legs tightly before I could say anything. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Alexander hesitated for a moment, but then gently placed a hand on Alfie's back, returning the hug. I swallowed hard. This was surprising. When Alfie finally stepped back, his face was shining. "Mummy, look!" He got me a Trex. "I see that," I replied, my voice softer than usual. Alexander met my eyes before standing tall again. "Was that a good choice, then?" I nodded, feeling a strange warmth. "Yeah, he loves dinosaurs." I figured that out during our chat on Saturday. Just like that, the warmth I felt faded because, of course, the next words from him were classic Alexander. "So," he added casually, "since Alfie and I are practically buddies now." "Don't push it," I mumbled. He ignored me. "I thought you two should come to my niece's birthday party this weekend." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Alexander smiled. "It's my sister's daughter's 5th birthday. Big event, lots of kids, cake, balloons, the whole thing. Alfie would have fun." I was ready to say no, but Alfie interrupted. "A birthday party?" He gasped happily. "Can we go, Mummy, please?" I paused. I looked at Alexander. He looked far too pleased. He had used my own son against me, and it was working. I sighed. "We'll see, Alfie." "But, Mummy, there will be cake and balloons and other kids," Alexander added, "and party bags. Can't forget the party bags." Alfie's eyes lit up. I groaned. "Fine, we'll go." The next few days went by quickly, and honestly, I was enjoying my new role. It was not as bad as I thought. I could do my work in peace, pick up Alfie from nursery, and even relax in my pajamas until noon if I wanted to pure bliss. No more Bobby calling me for no reason. It was Friday again, and Fridays meant errands. After picking up Alfie from nursery, where he told me that dinosaurs were cooler than astronauts and that I couldn't argue with him, we headed straight to Hamley's, the famous London toy store. "All right, Alfie," I said as we stepped inside, immediately amazed by all the bright colors, flashing lights, and excited children running around. "We need to find a gift for Alexander's niece." Alfie, already distracted by a huge stuffed tiger, exclaimed, "Mummy, can we live here?" I sighed. "No, sweetie, but remember you need to choose something for the birthday girl." Alfie huffed dramatically before pulling me toward the shelves with great focus. We had just reached the dolls and dress-up section when I felt a strange sensation, like someone was watching me. I looked over and thought I saw Bobby again, standing near the Lego section, looking suspicious. I blinked, then blinked again. Surely I was imagining things. Why would Bobby be here, at a toy shop? Maybe he had a nephew he needed to buy for, or maybe I was just being paranoid, and it wasn't even Bobby. I squinted, debating whether to check when suddenly. "Mummy, can we get her a unicorn that sings?" Alfie held up a giant pink plush unicorn. I stumbled back from its weight. "Alfie, this thing is bigger than you." "But it sings, Mummy, and it lights up, and it's fluffy." Before I could answer, I glanced back at the Lego section, but the man had disappeared. I took a deep breath. Okay, either Bobby was not very good at hiding, or I was losing my mind. "I think we should get her this," Alfie declared, hugging the unicorn tightly. I sighed, looking at the price tag. "How about something a bit smaller?" I suggested. Alfie frowned. "But Mummy." "What if we look at some fun craft kits instead?" I offered, guiding him away before he got too attached to the giant singing unicorn. As we moved to another aisle, I stole one last look behind me. No sign of Bobby. Maybe I was overthinking things. As soon as we entered Alexander's sister's large house in Hampstead, I knew we were in for a lively time, but in an organized way. It was the kind of wealthy that came with professional planners, catered cupcakes, and a real-life Elsa impersonator singing beautifully. The house itself was beautiful, an elegant ivy-covered Georgian home on a pretty street with wide paths and neat hedges. Inside, everything was decorated in a frozen theme. Blue balloons floated on the ceiling. Life-sized cardboard cutouts of Elsa and Anna stood proudly beside a sparkling backdrop of snowflakes and glittery curtains, and an impressive cake shaped like a castle sat on the dining table, complete with edible figures. In the garden, a blue and white bouncy castle was already filled with excited little kids, their joyful shouts rising as they bounced. Alfie looked around, eyes wide with amazement, then turned to me. "Mummy, this is the best party ever!" I laughed, watching him dash into the garden like he had been preparing for this day his entire life. At least someone's having a great time, I said to Alexander beside me. He smiled. You're not enjoying it? I thought you liked being around kids. Yes, it's exactly my idea of a relaxing Saturday, I replied, dodging a bubble wand from a passing fairy princess. To be fair, the party was impressive. Alfie dove into the treasure hunt, racing around the garden with a plastic snowflake medallion, completely in his element. Alexander surprisingly handled his baby nephew with ease, kneeled down to help his niece open her gifts, and charmed the kids into thinking he was a real ice prince. They followed him around like he was royalty, asking him questions about Olaf and wanting him to lead the next game. When the cake was finally cut, the kids erupted in cheers. His sister was warm and friendly, but she and her husband were clearly busy, making sure everything went perfectly. By the end, Alfie was covered in chocolate frosting and glitter, smiling so widely I thought his face might break. I was enjoying myself until I stepped outside for some air, standing by the open garden gate, trying to escape the noise. Beyond the hedge, the street was peaceful, just the quiet sounds of parents arriving late or leaving early. But then, I felt that strange sensation again. My breath caught. I slowly turned toward the hedge, and there, beyond the laughter and lights, I spotted someone. A man, half hidden behind a group of chatting parents near the driveway, tall, in a dark coat. My heart dropped. Could it be Bobby? I blinked. No, it couldn't be. I stared harder, my heart racing, but in moments he was gone, just disappeared among the crowd. I clenched my jaw, feeling uneasy. That was 3 times now, too many to call it a coincidence. Without thinking, I turned and walked quickly back toward the garden. I found Alexander still helping kids build a cake topper. I grabbed his sleeve. "We have an issue," I whispered. He looked at me immediately, his playful tone gone. His expression turned serious. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, my heart racing. "I think I just saw Bobby again." His face changed quickly, calmness replaced by a sharper look. "Again? Where?" I pointed toward the hedge. "Over there, but he's gone." He didn't hesitate. He moved fast, heading toward the front gate with a confident stride. He looked at both sides of the street, scanning every person. A moment later, he came back. "Nothing," he said, his brow furrowing. I crossed my arms, sighing heavily. Maybe I'm just imagining things. Alexander stayed silent for a moment. His eyes shifted from my face to the street. "How many times have you seen him?" he asked in a calm voice. I paused before answering. "This would be the 3rd. His jaw tightened. "3rd?" I nodded. "Earlier this week, I thought I saw him near Alfie's school. Same coat, same build. Then when we were getting a gift for your niece, he vanished before I could be sure." Alexander rubbed his face. "And now here." "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment. "I don't believe in coincidences." I felt a knot in my stomach. "Do you think it's him?" "I think someone is watching you," he said, his expression darkening. "And if it is him, he's getting bolder." I steadied my voice. "Should I be worried?" He didn't smile. "No." "He should." My mom showed up early Saturday morning. By noon, she had made herself at home, filled my fridge with food, and was now curious about my 4-year-old during lunch. I should have seen it coming. "So, my dear," she said sweetly, stirring her tea, "did you do anything fun while Grandma was away?" I stopped, fork in midair. Alfie, completely unaware of my panic, beamed. "Yes!" he exclaimed. "We went to a birthday party and there was a bouncy castle and a big cake." I sighed in relief. Good. Harmless fun. "And the next day, Mummy and Alexander took me for ice cream." Okay, still fine until Alfie, being a typical 4-year-old, added, "And then Mummy and Alexander shared a kiss." I sputtered on my tea. My mom perked up, eyes shining with mischief. "Oh, now that is interesting," she said. I spun around to Alfie, panicked. "Alfie, what did we talk about?" His eyes widened as if he just remembered our earlier chat. "Oh!" He covered his mouth dramatically. "I wasn't supposed to say that." I groaned and rested my head on the table. Meanwhile, my mom was enjoying this too much. "Darling," she teased, "why don't you tell me more about this kiss?" I rubbed my temples, knowing I was stuck. It had happened right outside the ice cream shop. We had just finished. Alfie was still chatting about his chocolate cone, and I thought he was distracted enough not to notice us. I was wrong. Alexander had been watching with amusement before leaning in. Just then, I heard a loud whisper. Mummy and Alexander shared a kiss. We quickly pulled apart, and Alfie was pointing at us, his face showing both betrayal and joy. You said kissing is yucky, he had accused, and Alexander just laughed. Well, Alfie, your mum seems to have changed her mind. I frowned at both of them and hurried Alfie back to the car before he could ask too many questions. Mom, watching me with a calm smile, sipped her tea. So, she said, is Alexander a good kisser? I stared at her. Mother. She giggled, actually giggled. Alfie, enjoying the chaos, nodded vigorously. Yeah, Grandma, they kissed for a long time. I groaned again, covering my face with my hands. Mom grinned, happy with the gossip. I like this Alexander. I looked at her, annoyed. Of course you do. She winked. So, when's the next kiss? I was mortified. Mother! I was still recovering from her teasing when Alfie, munching on a biscuit, suddenly perked up. Mummy, will we see Alexander today? He asked, his blue eyes sparkling with excitement. I hesitated, unsure how to answer. But Mom jumped in without missing a beat. That's a great question, Alfie, she said casually. Since I'm here, why don't we invite Alexander over for dinner? I narrowed my eyes at her. Oh, how convenient, I muttered. You just happened to have that idea right after asking about a certain incident? Mom grinned without a hint of guilt. Darling, I'm just thinking about family time. Family time, I repeated, unimpressed. Yes, she said, sweetly stirring her tea. I'd like to get to know the man my grandson likes and, apparently, the one who has been sharing moments with my daughter in public. I groaned. Alfie, not getting it, clapped his hands. Yay! Alexander's coming for dinner. I pinched the bridge of my nose. I haven't even called him yet. Mom gave me a look. Well, what are you waiting for? I sighed, pulling out my phone for a call I wasn't ready for. I dialed Alexander's number, and he picked up right away. Hi, love, he greeted, his voice warm like he expected my call. I was just about to call to see if you and Alfie wanted to come over for dinner tonight. I blinked. Well, I cleared my throat. Funny you should say that. Mom is in town and is actually inviting you over for dinner. There was a short pause. Nonsense, he replied confidently. You, your mom, and Alfie should come here instead. No need for your mom to do any work. I glanced at Mom, who was already mouthing say yes eagerly. Alexander, I insist, he said, his tone firm yet playful. Dress comfortably, bring your appetite, and I'll send my driver to pick you up. 6 o'clock all right? I sighed, feeling defeated. Yes, that's fine. Good, he replied, and I could hear him smiling. See you soon. I hung up and glared at my mom. Well, you tried, she said, barely hiding her amusement. Alfie cheered. We're going to Alexander's! I shook my head. This wasn't just dinner anymore. It felt like a setup, and somehow I had walked right into it. The drive to Alexander's was calm, except for my mom glancing at me every few minutes with a knowing look. She was enjoying this. Alfie, on the other hand, was counting down until we arrived. When the driver finally pulled up outside a house that could only be called stunning, I blinked. Mommy! Look! Alfie gasped, his nose pressed to the window. It's a castle! I wasn't going to admit it, but it did look like a fairy tale. Large but beautifully designed, it had character, with warm lights glowing from inside, giving it a cozy yet elegant feel. Wow, Mom said as she stepped out. This is very nice. Of course it is, I mumbled, grabbing the wrapped gift in my bag. The man is perfect. Alfie was already halfway up the front steps before I closed the car door. He rang the doorbell before I could catch up. It swung open, revealing a charming Alexander standing there like he owned the place. Right on time, he said smoothly, his green eyes sparkling with humor. Come in, come in. We stepped inside, and the house was even more inviting on the inside. Fancy? Yes. Cozy? Surprisingly, yes. Mom gave me another knowing glance. Very nice indeed, she remarked with approval. I ignored her because something else captured my attention, the delicious smell coming from the kitchen. What is that? I asked, sniffing the air suspiciously. Alexander smiled. That, my dear, is dinner. I blinked. You're cooking. He raised an eyebrow. Yes, that's how dinner typically works. I crossed my arms. No chef? No chef, he confirmed, rolling up his sleeves. I happen to be quite skilled in the kitchen. I stared at him, then at the beautifully arranged salad, the mashed potatoes that looked perfect, and the chicken sizzling in the pan, as if it were prepared by a professional. I turned to my mother. Are you seeing this? Mom sighed dramatically. Sweetheart, if you don't marry him, I will, my mother joked. I gasped in surprise. Mother! Alexander laughed as he drizzled sauce over the chicken, looking very confident. My dear soon-to-be mother-in-law, you are too kind, he replied smoothly. But I'm afraid my heart is set on your daughter. Mum beamed with joy. I playfully swatted at Alexander's arm but couldn't hide my blush. Alfie shouted, Mummy, look! He stood on a stool by the counter, eyes wide with excitement at a special plate Alexander had prepared for him. Chicken nuggets, crispy fries, and a little pot of ketchup, all carefully arranged. He made me my own food. Alfie grinned up at Alexander like he just found a new best friend. Alexander bent down to be at Alfie's level. Of course, buddy. I can't let you go hungry, can I? Alfie giggled and wrapped his arms around Alexander in a happy hug. I stood frozen, watching them. Mum put a hand over her heart, looking like she was enjoying a heartfelt movie, and Alexander seemed genuinely moved. There was something nice about how his usual sharp look softened into something warm. He hugged Alfie back and tousled his hair a bit. Glad you like it, mate. Watching them play together, I realized something I hadn't faced before. My son didn't have a strong male figure in his life. He never knew his father, and maybe I was so caught up in my own worries that I hadn't thought about what Alfie needed a kind and responsible person in his life. Thinking about Alexander wasn't really about him. It was about my guilt, the feeling that letting someone in would betray the past. I feared that if I opened my heart to someone new, I would forget James. I realized then that I had been wrong to only think of myself, and not of Alfie. I felt a sharp sense of regret. Even with his wealth, Alexander didn't act that way. He chatted with my mum about travel and other topics, mentioning how passionate I was about some things, which made me roll my eyes. Alfie was spellbound and kept saying that Alexander was the best cook in the world. Alexander leaned closer and whispered to me, Did you hear? Best cook in the world. You might need to step up your game. I pushed my mashed potatoes a bit too forcefully. Oh, stop it. Mum was loving it. You two bicker like an old married couple, she teased, sipping her drink. It's quite fun to watch. Alexander smirked at me, his green eyes twinkling. Thanks. I'm working on it. I almost choked on my drink. Excuse me? Mum just laughed, clearly enjoying the moment as she returned to her meal. Dessert was a beautiful blueberry pie with fresh cream that looked like it belonged in a fancy bakery. I took a bite and sighed happily. Okay, fine. You do have good taste. Alexander leaned in closer. Only the best, especially with good company. I rolled my eyes while Alfie was busy diving into his pie, almost forgotten about the meal he had just eaten. My mum leaned back, smiling contentedly. Well, Alexander, if this CEO job ever bores you, you could open a restaurant. He chuckled and poured her another glass of wine. Good to know I have options. She smiled at him, clearly impressed. Honestly, this meal is better than many places I've paid a lot for. I shook my head, part amused, part embarrassed. After dinner, we enjoyed our drinks and relaxed a bit longer. If I didn't know better, I'd think it was too nice, which usually meant something was going to go wrong. As Alexander parked outside our house, I reached for my bag. Something felt off, but I didn't realize what until I stepped out of the car. My front door stood wide open, as if someone had left in a hurry. A wave of worry washed over me. Mummy? Alfie asked, pulling on my hand. Why is the door like that? My mom immediately took charge, gripping Alfie's hand. Stay close to me, sweetheart. I turned to Alexander, my heart racing. He had already moved to stand in front of me, his relaxed stance shifting to serious. Stay back, he whispered, stepping toward the house. I swallowed hard and followed him inside. My heart sank. The house was a mess, not just broken into, but completely ransacked. Drawers were pulled out, cushions were ripped, and the coffee table was smashed. Pictures were torn down, and shattered glass was everywhere. Words had been written on the walls that sent chills through me. I stepped back, my breath quickening. It felt too personal. Alexander moved forward, his face dark with anger. "Lily, get back outside." "No! Lily!" His tone brooked no argument. "You need to take your mom and Alfie to the car." By the time the police arrived, I was in shock, not feeling the cold November air. Alexander had taken charge from the moment he saw the damage, urging Mum to take Alfie to his place without hesitation. He handed her his keys and address so she wouldn't get lost. "Mummy, come with us," Alfie said quietly, holding onto my hand. I knelt down to reassure him. "I'll follow you soon, sweetheart. I just need to get some clothes." Mum looked at me, clearly hesitant, but Alexander gave her an encouraging nod and she followed his lead. Soon it was just Alexander and me waiting for the police. They arrived 10 minutes later, 2 officers, 1 man and 1 woman. They introduced themselves, asked a few basic questions, and requested to come in. I stepped aside, though every part of me wanted to stay outside and forget the chaos inside. "What time did you leave home, Miss Harrington?" "Just before 6. "Did you lock the door?" "Yes." "Any signs of forced entry?" I pointed to the damaged doorframe. "Does that count?" They nodded grimly. The female officer examined the broken door. "Looks like someone kicked it in." They carefully searched the house, noting the damaged furniture and walls. Alexander stayed close, always within reach. When we entered the living room, I stopped. Seeing James's picture on the floor made me feel a sharp pain. It hurt more than the chaos around me. I took a breath. "There's someone I need to mention," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think someone has been following me. At first I thought I was imagining it, but this proves I'm not." The officers turned to listen. "Can you describe him?" "He's tall, with light brown hair. He works in the same building as me. His name is Bobby Evans. He used to be my line manager before I moved." They wrote that down. "Did he ever threaten you?" "Not directly, but he doesn't stop. It's uncomfortable. We had a fight recently." The officer nodded slowly. "We need to talk to him." I looked at Alexander. He seemed ready to take action. "We can't arrest anyone without evidence," he said. "But we can talk to him and let him know we are checking on this." "Will you keep me updated?" I asked. "Of course. And if anything else happens, call us right away." They gave me a crime number and a pamphlet for support. As they finished up, one of my older neighbors approached us, wearing slippers and a warm outfit. "Excuse me," she said, looking at the officers. "I saw a man hanging around earlier. He didn't look familiar. He was tall and seemed a bit nervous." My heart sank. "Did you see his face?" "Not really, no. But something felt off." The officers took her details and thanked her. After they left, Alexander put his arm around my shoulders. "You need to pack your things because you can't stay here tonight. It's best to stay away for a couple of days." "I know." I sighed. "It's not safe for Alfie." He looked at me seriously. "What about you?" I didn't answer, but headed towards the stairs, taking one last look around the room. The house felt empty now, the safety it once held gone. At Alexander's house, the mood was calm. Alfie had been put to bed shortly after we arrived, and Mum stayed in the same room with him, probably to ease her own worries. I had a cozy room waiting for me with warm lights and a gentle scent of lavender. Nothing about it felt cold or distant. Alexander had even put out fresh towels and a phone charger. Now, the 3 of us sat at the kitchen counter, holding mugs of tea. The air was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Mum broke the silence first. "I can't believe you didn't tell me how serious it was," she said, looking at me pointedly. "You said it was nothing and that Alexander was handling it." I winced. "Mum?" "No, Lily. I asked, and you acted like it didn't matter. If that little boy had walked in with you—" "But he didn't," I interrupted. Mum turned to Alexander, her eyes fierce. "Did you know this was happening?" Alexander nodded slowly. "I had my suspicions. After Lily mentioned seeing Bobby hanging around more than once at my niece's birthday party, I started paying more attention. He changed. His mood at work was not right. You should have fired him, Mum said angrily. That man is dangerous. I grabbed my mug, needing the warmth. It's not that easy, Mum. Alexander leaned forward slightly, speaking clearly. She's right. We must follow proper steps. UK employment law is strict. You can't just let someone go without a good reason, especially in a company. But he was harassing her. And I gave him a formal warning, Alexander said. When he spread lies, I gave him a warning letter. I moved him to another floor, making sure Lily wouldn't have to see him again. Mum crossed her arms. It still seems like you didn't do enough. Alexander's jaw tightened a bit. If I had enough solid proof to dismiss him, I would have. But if we let him go without following the rules, we could face serious legal problems. Mum sighed. That's ridiculous. That's how it is, he said firmly. We are doing everything right, and now after what happened today, the police are involved. That changes everything. I looked at him closely. There was determination in his eyes. I've already told security at the office. If he shows up anywhere near you, they'll let me know right away, he added. And I'm having security cameras put up outside your house tomorrow. Mum blinked. Oh. You're both staying here until we know it's safe, Alexander stated as if it were settled. No arguing. Mum looked at me, clearly considering her next words. But then she nodded, quietly reaching for her tea again. You're a good man, Alexander, she said softly. I could tell from the moment I met you. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure my voice would work. It was close to 4 p.m. when I left the office, my heels softly echoing on the concrete of the parking garage. The lights flickered as I walked to my car, and it was quiet except for the sound of the generators. I pressed the unlock button on my key, the headlights flashing briefly. You really are something else. I turned sharply. Bobby stood nearby, arms crossed, a strange look in his eyes. Seeing him made me uneasy. What are you doing here? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He scoffed. Didn't take long, did it? Trading your self-respect for a job. Must be nice having the CEO on your side. I rolled my eyes and turned back to my car. Get a life, Bobby. But he moved quickly. His hand grasped my arm tightly, pulling me back around. Don't walk away from me! Let me go, I snapped, trying to pull free, but he held on tighter. What, you think you're better than everyone now? He sneered. My anger flared. You're sad, I said quietly. You couldn't handle rejection, so you spread lies. You got caught, and that's on you. His expression changed. You think you're so special. Hey! The shout came from where the elevators were. Two of my colleagues, Elliot from IT and Farah from Finance, were headed our way, looking concerned. Let her go! Elliot shouted, walking faster. Bobby hesitated, clenching his jaw, but then pushed me away roughly. You're not worth it, he spat, stepping back. Then, like the coward he was, he turned and hurried away. Elliot reached me first. Are you all right? I nodded, even though my heart was racing. Yeah, I'm okay. Farah was already on her phone. Security is coming. I took a deep breath, staring at the spot where Bobby had disappeared. The police station felt colder than I expected, not because it was chilly, but because of the serious atmosphere. Everything looked clean and plain, just what you'd expect from a place meant to uphold order. Alexander stood beside me, silent and tense. His hand rested lightly on my back. A young officer at the front desk looked up as we got close. Afternoon. How can I help? Yes, Alexander said before I could speak. We're here to report an incident from less than an hour ago. There were witnesses. The officer's tone changed instantly. Okay. If you would both take a seat, I'll get someone from CID to take your statement. CID. Great. Alexander led me to some plastic chairs in the waiting area. He hadn't said much since we got into the car, but now I could feel the tension coming off him. 10 minutes passed before a plainclothes officer, maybe in his 30s, with quick eyes and a notebook, appeared. Miss Harrington? He asked. I stood. Yes. I'm Detective Sergeant Patel. If you both could come through, we'll get your report written down. The interview room felt a bit warmer, at least. A recording device blinked red on the table. Is it okay to record this for accuracy? DS Patel asked. You're not in trouble or anything. It's a normal part of gathering witness statements. Sure, I replied, and he pressed the button. Let's start with the basics. Can you confirm your full name and date of birth? Lilybeth Harrington, I said, keeping my voice steady, even though I felt nervous inside. He nodded and made some notes. Can you tell me what happened this afternoon? I explained everything, my voice firm but a bit strained. I talked about leaving work just after 4, walking through the underground staff car park, seeing Bobby, the shouting, his grip on my arm, and how 2 colleagues, Elliot and Farah, rushed over before things got worse. Did he say anything to you? D.S. Patel asked, pen ready, looking calm but attentive. I hesitated and quickly glanced at Alexander beside me. His jaw was tight. He called me a gold digger, I finally said, trying to keep my voice neutral. He said I was using Mr. Wolf to get ahead. Patel looked up. Mr. Wolf? Alexander Wolf, he said smoothly. He's the CEO of the company. I work for him, yes, but that's not important to this incident. Patel nodded and wrote something down. When he grabbed your arm, would you say it was forceful? I nodded. Yes. He held my arm tightly enough to leave a mark. He was aggressive, and I felt threatened. May I? He asked, and I rolled up my sleeve to show the red mark. He looked at it for a moment. We'll have police photographers take pictures before you leave. This will be recorded as evidence. Alexander shifted beside me, finally speaking up. He has already been warned, he said, his voice firm and quiet. I had him demoted 2 weeks ago for spreading false rumors about Miss Harrington at work. Patel looked up. What else has happened? There was an incident at her home, Alexander replied. A few nights ago, someone left threatening messages. Your team should have that report. Patel frowned as he flipped through a file on the table. Yes, I've got that recorded here, Borough Road, right? I nodded. We thought it might be related. No one broke in, no fingerprints, nothing left behind. But it felt targeted. Patel's eyes narrowed as he wrote more notes. And you suspect Bobby Evans could be involved? I can't prove it, I admitted. But I've seen him a few times. Once outside Hamley's near my son's school, and today. It feels like he's watching me. Patel nodded slowly. So, we're looking at a pattern of behavior possible harassment. We'll talk to your colleagues, Elliot and Farah, right? Yes. We'll also formally interview Mr. Evans. If his answers seem off, or if there's any sign of danger, we will take action. For now, there's an official complaint of assault, backed by witnesses and injuries. That falls under Section 39 of the Criminal Justice Act. We're documenting this, and based on your colleague's statements, he could receive a warning or be brought in. Alexander looked tense. Why not approach him now? Patel remained calm. We have to follow proper procedures, Mr. Wolf. Acting too soon without enough evidence could weaken the case later on. However, given today's event, we're marking this matter as a priority. He turned to me. Miss Harrington, if anything else happens, no matter how small, you call us. Any messages, sightings, report them immediately. We'll ask our neighborhood policing team to step up patrols near your home. I nodded. Thank you. Patel stood up, shutting his notebook. We'll contact you in the next 48 hours with an update. You'll get a crime reference number before you leave. We'll also arrange for the photography now. He looked at Alexander again. You made the right choice bringing her in. Alexander nodded. We left the interview room quietly. A female officer came to take photos of my arm, and 10 minutes later we stepped outside into the cool evening air. Alexander opened the passenger door for me and waited until I was inside before walking around to his side. Once seated, he turned slightly towards me, his green eyes sharp. He won't come near you again, he said firmly. I'll make sure of it. Mummy, can we stay here forever? The question came softly as I tucked the blanket around Alfie. He looked up at me, sincere and small, clutching his dinosaur. I paused. Alfie, this is Alexander's house. We're only here for a few days. I know, he said quietly. But I love being with him. My heart tightened. I love spending time with him, too, I answered, brushing his hair back. He nodded slowly, looking tiny in the big bed. He talks to me like a grown-up, not like I'm just a kid. I felt a wave of emotion. He listens, Mommy. I kissed his forehead, my voice shaky. I know, sweetheart. He yawned and closed his eyes, snuggling with his dinosaur. Night-night. Good night, my love. I turned off the light and slipped out quietly, closing the door behind me. I barely made it to the kitchen before everything overwhelmed me. The weight, the guilt, the reality hit hard. I leaned against the kitchen counter and covered my face with my hands. Then I cried. I cried for all the years I had to be strong, for all the moments I felt I wasn't good enough, for all the times I took Alfie to daycare on my own, for school events where I was the only one cheering. I didn't notice him approach until I felt him, strong arms wrapped around me from behind, warm and comforting. I leaned back, letting go of my struggle to hold it together. He turned me gently to face him, offering comfort without words. After a while, he guided me to a stool at the kitchen counter, his hand resting lightly on my back as he moved to make tea. He worked calmly, knowing where everything was. He poured hot water over the tea bag and set the cup in front of me. I wrapped my hands around the mug, grateful for its warmth. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Talk to me," he said softly. I looked at the tea. I think I've been selfish. He just waited quietly. I took a deep breath. I've spent 4 years protecting Alfie from hurt and confusion. I've tried to be everything for him, his mother, his father, his protector. Another shaky breath escaped me. But in doing that, I forgot something really important. Alexander remained silent, attentive. I forgot that he needed someone else too. A male role model, someone stable and kind, not to replace James, but to help him feel seen, to share activities together. I blinked, tears brimming. I was so scared of letting anyone in because I thought it meant I had to let go of James. Like if I cared for someone else, I'd be letting him down somehow. Alexander frowned and bent down closer to me until our eyes met. "You're not selfish, Lily. You're human." I tried to argue, but he raised a hand gently. "Grief is tough. Love is tough. But one doesn't cancel the other. Loving again doesn't mean you've forgotten James. It means your heart is still open. That there's still space in it." A tear rolled down my cheek and he caught it with his thumb. "James would be proud of you. Proud of the mother you've been. Proud of how you've raised Alfie. I'm sure if he could see you now, he'd want you to be happy." My heart ached. "I'm scared," I whispered. He nodded slowly. "So am I." He stood and took both my hands in his. "When you're ready, and after everything with Bobby is settled, I'd like to take you on a real date. No chaos, no interruptions. Just the two of us getting to know each other." My throat tightened. "Take your time. There's no rush. But when you are ready, I would like to be something more." I swallowed hard and showed a small smile. "I think I would like that too." His smile was soft, filled with warmth that I didn't dare name. It was a typical gray November Saturday, perfect for tea and cozy socks. The heating was on full blast, and Mum was downstairs finishing the last of the housework, thankfully no longer a mess. Alexander had taken Alfie out for the afternoon for something fun and proper bonding. I didn't even argue. Alfie was excited and Alexander looked happy. "Back by 5, he'd said with a wink, "to give you some peace to sort everything out." I was halfway through sorting a stack of mail when there was a knock at the front door, soon followed by it opening. "I saw your car and Margaret's out front. I thought I'd drop by." It was Callie. I smiled, relieved to see her. She stepped into the hallway, scarf still around her neck, eyes scanning me as she pulled off her gloves. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry, love. Are you okay?" I sighed and shared what had happened. "Honestly, I don't know what his issue is. Bobby was a decent boss at first. He was charming but never crossed any serious lines. Then he became pushy, and just when I thought I'd had enough, he would go back to being pleasant." Callie raised her eyebrows. "That man's not right." I forced a laugh. "I thought he got the message. I really did. Until wait. Remember that guy I met at the party?" Her eyes lit up. "Oh my God, yes, I meant to ask. What about him?" I chuckled, thankful for the distraction. "Well, He turned out to be my boss. Callie gasped. You're kidding. I wish I was, I said, crossing my arms. The CEO. I had no idea back then. Callie whistled. That explains a lot. So what, Bobby got jealous? I nodded. Completely lost it. That's when he started acting weird. Rumors, tension, the break-in, and now. I brought her up to speed about the lunch date that started it all with Bobby and about how Alexander had been there through it all. She rubbed her forehead. Men, honestly, they can't handle rejection. I sighed. If only it stopped there. Well, Callie said firmly, he's messed with the wrong woman. And from what you've told me about Alexander, you've got backup now. I smiled softly, thinking of Alfie's excitement when Alexander asked if he wanted to hang out that day. Yeah, I whispered. I do. Mom, I think I want to sell this house, I said softly, not quite looking at her. I don't think I can live here anymore. It's time for a change. Alexander had spent some time with Alfie to keep him from worrying about what happened in the house. We had spent the last 2 days cleaning and rearranging, but nothing felt the same. The walls still held memories of what had happened. Mom looked up from the box she was sealing, her expression softening. Are you sure, love? I nodded slowly. We've done all we can, but it doesn't feel like home anymore. Every time I walk in, I remember the mess. I hear Alfie's scared voice. I see James's photo, and My throat tightened. I think it's time to let this place go. She stepped over and pulled me into a gentle hug. You don't need to explain, she whispered into my hair. You've been through a lot here. If moving on brings you peace, then it's the right choice. I let out a shaky breath. James will always be in my heart. But he's not in these walls. He's in Alfie. He's in the way I talk to him sometimes. He's in my memories, not this house. Mom nodded, her eyes shiny but proud. You're allowed to move forward, Lily, and you're doing it beautifully. I wiped my cheek and managed a small smile. I'm ready to start a new chapter. Since we returned home, it had been quiet. The house felt normal again. The cushions were back on the sofa, the photos rehung, and the curtains drawn open to let in the late autumn light. Mom had left yesterday, happy that we were on the mend. I hadn't told her I still checked the locks before bed. I closed my laptop just after 2:30 p.m. and grabbed my keys. It was time to pick up Alfie from nursery. The drive was short. The nursery was tucked between leafy hedges in a nice part of town, safe and cheerful. The kind of place that made you feel secure. Until today. As I parked, I saw a commotion near the front gate. A staff member stood at the door with a walkie-talkie. Another worker looked stressed, and in the center stood Bobby. He was visibly upset, arguing, saying, I'm here to pick up my son, Alfie Harrington Roberts. I felt cold fear rush over me. I slammed the car door and marched across the lot, my voice firm. Get away from him! Bobby turned as I spoke. Lily, he said, that familiar smirk on his face. You didn't tell them I'd be collecting Alfie today? You're not on the contact list, the staff member replied sharply. We've called the police. You should, I said, stepping in front of him. This man has no right to my son. Bobby's eyes narrowed. Come on, Lily. Don't make a scene. He's practically mine. His voice made my stomach turn. A carer came out, holding Alfie's hand. He blinked, confused. Mummy? I dropped to my knees. It's okay, love. I'm here. Bobby tried to step closer. Alfie, it's me. Don't you say his name, I said, standing up. You're not his father. You mean nothing to us. The sound of sirens grew in the distance, and for the first time, Bobby looked unsure. You need to leave, one of the staff said firmly. I held Alfie close as 2 police officers pulled into the lot and stepped out. Bobby backed up, hands raised. I didn't do anything, he said quickly. You tried to take a child from a licensed place, one officer said. We need you to come with us. Lily, it's your fault I got fired, he shouted. I stood my ground. Take him away. Alfie buried his face in my shoulder as Bobby was handcuffed. An officer looked at me. We'll need your full statement. I nodded. You'll have it. Inside the nursery, the manager apologized a lot, but I raised my hand to stop him. You did nothing wrong. Alfie held onto my jacket tightly. Mummy, why was that man trying to take me? I knelt down and brushed his hair back. Some people just don't listen, but you're safe. I promise. When I called Alexander later, he was clearly upset. He crossed a line. He crossed many, I replied softly. There was a silence, then he said, You and Alfie are staying with me tonight. No arguing. I didn't argue because I knew I had someone to rely on now, and I felt sure that everything would be all right. Epilogue. 5 years later, laughter filled the air at Disneyland Paris, mixed with the smell of cotton candy, popcorn, and cheerful music echoing around us. Alfie was excitedly pulling his cousin toward the Dumbo ride, his Mickey ears askew and his shoes sticky from melted ice cream. I smiled, feeling happy as I watched him enjoy a childhood I once feared he might miss out on. We were a lively group now, me, Alexander, my mum, Alfie, the twins, and Alexander's sister Caroline with her husband and kids. It was a joyful chaos, bright and sunny. Alexander stood next to me, one twin on his hip while the other held his free hand. He smiled at me, and I felt that familiar flutter from when we first met. His hair was a bit messy from a roller coaster, and his shirt was untucked from little hands pulling at him all day. He still looked like the man who had come into my life and brought so much happiness. Caroline and my mum were happily chatting on a shaded bench, taking a break while the dads chased after the kids. I could hear my mum laughing and waving at Alfie as he zoomed by in his Dumbo ride. Alfie was 9 now, tall, cheeky, and best friends with Alexander. He once proudly announced that Alexander was his best mate. Alexander had taught Alfie to ride a bike, helped him learn to read, and filled his life with excitement. He was like a dad to Alfie in every way that mattered. I took a deep breath, soaking in the magic of the day. Sometimes I still thought about Bobby, how things had gone so wrong. He had been ordered to get help and sent to a facility for treatment after his struggles. In time, things returned to normal. After that, Alexander and I started dating. He was patient and never rushed me. When he proposed a year later, it felt like the right thing to do. Now we had been married for 4 years, and I never missed a day where I didn't feel grateful for how my life had changed. James would always be in my heart. I had loved him and raised Alfie without him, but I knew he would be at peace now. Alfie was happy. I was happy. We had found someone who loved us both without question. Hey, Mrs. Wolf, Alexander said with a playful nudge. Are you going to daydream all day? Or do you want to ride It's a Small World again with everyone? I laughed and linked my arm through his. Lead the way, Mr. Wolf. And as we joined the fun again, laughing kids, sweet treats, and all I knew, this was the happy ending I never expected.